across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 12 o'clock on Tuesday, the 21st of October. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Nana Akua.
Now another $7 billion in the red. New figures today show Rachel Reeves accidentally borrowed £7.2 billion more than she thought she would, adding to the pain of next month's budget. We speak to the Treasury Minister, Torsten Bell.
A second grooming gang survivor has quit the inquiry before it has even got going, saying that they were being silenced, and it comes as GB News reveals that some victims have been prevented from questioning the two prospective chairs today, and that they were given guidance on their questions.
Also today, Virginia Giuffre's posthumous autobiography is released 6 months after her death. Now her co-author has said the late author would see Prince Andrew formally losing his titles as a victory.
Britain risked sleepwalking in a de facto blasphemy law, warns one senior politician. Shadow Energy Secretary Claire Coutinho is calling on the government to publish its secretive working group's advice on the Islamophobia definition. Despite reports the definition has been dropped, work on it has continued.
And it's our final week of daylight savings time. But should we abolish the concept altogether? Well, Spain's Prime Minister, Pedro Sanchez, is calling for European summertime to be abolished. Should we follow suit and stop changing the clocks? We've got an interesting debate coming up a little bit later in the show between two people with very strong opinions on changing the clocks. On the one hand, we've got Peter Hitchens, who believes firmly that GMT is the real time and every other time is fake. And we've also got a pro-summertime activist, Christopher Snowdon, who believes that we should stay in summertime the whole time.
Well, of course. Do you know when daylight saving began?
Which year?
Yes, it began in 1874.
1874?
Yes,
Why was that?
It was Benjamin Franklin.
Wow.
And he decided that they wanted a bit more daylight, so he said he set it up there. And it was only taken up, do you know when?
In the UK, 1920s?
1916, you're very close. Oof. First World War, to conserve energy and coal and things like that. So that's why we've done it. And it is interesting because I quite like it. I quite like the uneasiness of it. You know, things change a little bit, but then it's the circadian rhythm is the argument.
Right. People genuinely lose sleep over this. And
literally.
Right.
Depending which way the clocks are going.
It makes people, you know, less well off. I understand that for some farmers in the Outer Hebrides, this helps. But I think for the vast majority of people, I mean, the day is going to get darker this Sunday when the clocks change. I don't think that's a good thing.
No. And actually, it was 1784, just to correct myself. But yeah, no, but seriously, I think I like it. But I suppose, you know, what do you think? gbnews.com/you'll say, should we abolish daylight savings? Let's hear your thoughts. But first, let's get your latest news headlines with Sam Francis.
Tom, Nana, thank you very much, and good afternoon to you. Just coming up to 4 minutes past 12. The ghostwriter of Virginia Giuffre's memoir, Nobody's Girl, out today, has called on Prince Andrew to tell US police everything he knows about Jeffrey Epstein's abuse. Amy Wallace says the Duke of York needs to speak about his own moral compass, claiming his silence continues to hurt Epstein victims. Lawyer Gloria Allred, who represents several of those victims, echoed the call, urging Andrew to cooperate with investigators about what he may have witnessed at Epstein's Manhattan home. Prince Andrew continues to deny all wrongdoing, but senior Tory Robert Jenrick told us earlier he thinks the public are sick of him.
He's disgraced himself, he's embarrassed the royal family time and again. He should just go and lead a quiet life now, away from the public gaze. He certainly shouldn't be drawing on the taxpayer in any way. No more subsidies for luxury homes for him. Enough is enough.
The Home Office says it will do whatever it takes to uncover the truth about grooming gangs. Excuse me. That is after two survivors of abuse quit a key advisory panel. Fiona Goddard and Ellie Reynolds resigned from the Victims Liaison panel, warning the government risks losing trust over delays to a national inquiry. Ms Goddard says she fears a former police chief or social worker could be chosen to lead it. The very institutions, she says, covered up the abuse. Talks are reportedly taking place today with two possible candidates to lead the inquiry. Well, Ellie Reynolds told us earlier more members could walk unless ministers appoint an independent chair.
Plenty of social workers and police officers, I think they're scared of it getting out there because their jobs are then in jeopardy. And I think if you're not going to do it properly, why are you doing it anyway? I think my message to the Home Office and the government would be well scripted but not scripted enough, because you underestimated the power of the survivors yet again.
Boris Johnson has told the COVID inquiry that closing schools during the pandemic was a nightmare idea, but insists he was left with no choice. The former Prime Minister, who launched the inquiry himself in 2022, denied there had been a failure to plan, contradicting evidence from his former Education Secretary, Sir Gavin Williamson. Mr Johnson said he hoped schools would stay open, but the pace of the pandemic made closures unavoidable. It's his second appearance at the inquiry, where he previously apologised for the pain and loss caused by COVID. The Conservatives say more than 2,000 prisoners convicted of rape, of stalking and grooming could be freed early under the government's new sentencing bill. They've tabled an amendment to block what they call an insult to victims, warning dangerous offenders should serve the full term. But ministers have hit back, accusing the Tories of hypocrisy, pointing out that thousands of serious criminals were also released early when they were in power. The government, though, insists the new bill is designed to ease overcrowding while keeping the public safe. In the last few moments, US Vice President J.D. Vance has arrived in Israel as Washington is pushing to stabilise the fragile Gaza ceasefire. His visit follows talks between the Israeli Prime Minister Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner as Hamas leaders meet mediators in Cairo. J.D. Vance is expected to visit military command centres there, overseeing Gaza's stabilisation efforts amid renewed clashes and disputes over aid and hostage returns. Donald Trump's 20-point peace plan calls for Hamas to disarm and for steps towards a Palestinian state, demands though both sides have yet to fully accept. Israeli football club Maccabi Tel Aviv has said it will refuse any tickets for next month's Europa League match at Aston Villa over safety concerns for its supporters. It follows a decision by Birmingham's Safety Advisory Group to ban Maccabi fans from attending, a move the government later urged to be overturned. But the club says a toxic atmosphere and hate-filled falsehoods have left fans fearing for their safety. The government says it's deeply saddened by the situation, calling it completely unacceptable that the match has been used to stir up violence and fear. And Pizza Hut has announced 68 restaurant closures across the UK, with more than 1,200 staff set to lose their jobs. Branches in cities including Leeds, in Brighton, Bristol and Edinburgh will shut in the coming weeks, along with 11 delivery sites. Administrators say soaring costs and tax pressures forced the move. Global parent company Yum Brands has stepped in to save 64 of the remaining restaurants. Pizza Hut says it is working with affected staff to ensure they receive support and redundancy help. Those are the midday headlines. I'll be back with you shortly. Now, though, it's over to Tom and Nana.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 8 minutes past midday. Now, the latest developments into the national inquiry into grooming gangs. Prospective chair Annie Hudson has withdrawn from the process and didn't attend the interviews.
The Labour government has been accused of sabotaging the grooming gang's national inquiry as 2 victims quit the liaison panel after claiming that they were silenced.
Well, it all comes as GBNews revealed that some survivors have been prevented from questioning those 2 prospective chairs. Our national reporter, Charlie Peters, spoke earlier with Ellie Reynolds, who quit the panel last night.
The emails about the drafted questions and being given indication on what we should be telling them or what we should be asking them. I actually replied to that email and said to the lady in question, is it mandatory that we're doing this 24 hours before? Because then they've had 24 hours to sit on this and then we're getting a scripted answer ultimately. The way that they came across was very controlling and manipulative. They almost, well, they did gaslight us into thinking that we had nowhere to turn apart from them.
Well, we're joined now by GBNews' national reporter, Charlie Peters, to tell us more. Charlie.
Well, the removal of Annie Hudson from this process has come as a bit of a shock to that panel of survivors who were expected to give questions to both her and Jim Gamble, a former senior police officer. He had a senior role in tackling child sexual exploitation as well, led a team that achieved great success on that a decade or so ago. But just the one candidate appeared for interview today, and as I understand it, survivors were told this morning that Annie Hudson was withdrawing herself from the process, this former social worker, in part due to recent media coverage after it was revealed last week their identities and also, of course, their working backgrounds, which has been the cause of some concern from victims engaging with the Home Office who have said, including Fiona Goddard, the Bradford survivor who issued that statement yesterday, quitting, saying that she was concerned about a social worker and a police officer because of the broader context of her abuse, of how the grooming gangs have operated for so long, that both of those professions have been implicated in many towns in the cover-up of this forms of abuse. I would say, however, to that, Jim Gamble has got a very serious record of tackling child exploitation and abuse. I have heard from those close to the story, as it were, who have said that Jim Gamble has got an excellent record also, but also a demeanour of following up evidence and chasing things ruthlessly, and that he would not be swayed on any conflict of interest about police officers.
And yet he's a former police officer, and there are people in this process who think, why on earth can't we find a judge? Well, lots of other statutory inquiries are led by judges. Why not this one?
Well, Tom, of the 24 announced or ongoing inquiries, just one doesn't have a judge. That's the Orgreave inquiry being led by a bishop. It could soon become 2, because as it stands, one candidate has been announced as being going forward to having these interviews with survivors. And when you speak to senior legal figures, there are 2,000 KCs, plenty of judges, many of them senior, some are retired, of course, looking for this sort of work. A lot of people are saying, especially victims and their families, that only really a legal mind can take in the deeply complex information that's required here and also manage the inquiry like a courtroom. Because some criticism I've heard of, say, the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse that ran for 7 years is that Alexis J, the social worker, had great experience in dealing with the problem, but didn't necessarily encounter lawyers particularly effectively who were able to sort of manage the room perhaps over her authority in some cases. And that led to some information being missed from discussions, it's been claimed, and I've heard that concern raised by lawyers themselves. So with this current inquiry, we've now got 2 victims who've quit, both citing concerns about the scope. Last night, Jess Phillips, the Safeguarding Minister, she told the Home Affairs Select Committee in a letter that it was untrue that judicial appointments were not interested in this process, that some judges could be interested, although we haven't seen anyone come forward publicly and say that. And there was reporting in The Guardian last week that judges were nervous about engaging with it due to it being a toxic issue. But we've also had from Jess Phillips in this letter, she says it's categorically untrue also to say that the scope has been widened or that the terms of reference are not focusing specifically on grooming gangs. However, that is in contrast to what survivors themselves are claiming, those involved in this process, saying that they're being asked more broadly about child sexual exploitation and abuse, and also that there have been concerns, as Ellie Reynolds told us this morning, that when they've spoken about race, they've been shut down. When they've spoken about perhaps those cultural or ethnicity drivers, then the conversation has been limited.
So why is it taking so long, though, to get going?
Well, The infected blood scandal, as Jess Phillips said in her letter, I mean, that took 7 months to find a chair. But the problem this inquiry has, which is quite difficult, is that in January, the government, with Jess Phillips, but admittedly a different Home Secretary and Yvette Cooper, they said they'd launch at least 5 local inquiries, including Oldham, which they'd previously said shouldn't have one, to gather evidence and then to start that process. If they had been launched then, they'd then be feeding in evidence to this national inquiry. One senior lawyer, David Greenwood, a solicitor who works on child abuse compensation claims, he told me last week that basically they've got it the wrong way around. This national inquiry is going to have to gather evidence first and then direct those local inquiries, and that's going to be a very long process. So there are fears now, Nana, because of the sort of legal mess that it's allegedly in, according to those figures like David Greenwood, that this inquiry could return after the next election, which would be politically very difficult for Labour, especially as so many of the local authorities implicated in the cover-up of this abuse and the failure to sufficiently engage with the crisis are Labour-run authorities.
Or convenient, frankly, for a party if this incredibly detailed and investigative inquiry doesn't report until after the general election. The country will be, for more or less, in the dark until after that general election. And also, as you say that, about the convenience of it, we do know there has been some lobbying, as it were, from West Yorkshire, their mayor, their deputy mayor, looking at whether there should be a region-wide investigation. Jess Phillips has also pushed back against that as a prospect last night in that letter. But we do know that that's what they're calling for. All the Labour MPs in the region signing a letter saying we want it to be region-wide. But we've seen in the previous investigations into places like Rochdale, Rotherham and Telford, it's through those targeted, specific, locational investigations that more detail comes out. So that's been the subject of some criticism from survivors on the panel, which we reported last week. Charlie Peters, thanks as ever for giving us the very latest on this fast-moving story.
Well, a Home Office spokesperson said the abuse of children by grooming gangs is one of the most horrific crimes imaginable. Any suggestion that this inquiry is being watered down is completely wrong. We are committed to delivering a robust, thorough inquiry that will get to the truth and provide the answers that survivors have so long campaigned for.
The Home Office continued. We're grateful to all of those who shared their insights with us. We share the concerns around unhelpful speculation while this process is live, which is why we will not be providing a running commentary.
All right, well, it's just coming up to 17 minutes after midday. The Chancellor's promising to make life easier for businesses by cutting out needless red tape.
Yes, at the Regional Investment Summit in Birmingham, Rachel Reeves revealed plans that she says could save firms nearly £6 billion a year, with simpler rules and less form-filling for small business owners.
Well, let's speak to GBNews' political correspondent, Catherine Forster. So Catherine, talk us through and tell us a bit more about what Rachel Reeves was proposing.
Yes, well, first of all, welcome to Edgbaston Cricket Ground that you see behind me. We've got the Chancellor of the Exchequer, the Business Secretary, the Culture Secretary, about 350 business leaders here. When you come in, you come past a very, very lovely Range Rover and even more lovely, in my opinion, Aston Martin. Both those car companies, of course, based here in Birmingham. And the government want to tell a story of growth, don't they? Yes, the growth projections are pretty anemic, but they say it's still their #1 mission. Rachel Reeves has said that she's pledging to get growth that is felt in every part of Britain, something much easier said than done. But yes, they're announcing fundamentally a blitz on business business bureaucracy. They say they're going to be slashing red tape, particularly for small businesses. They say that by the end of the Parliament that could save business up to £6 billion a year. They reckon it will save about a couple of hundred hours of admin a year for small businesses. So every little helps. We know that regulation does make life difficult, especially for smaller business. Also announcing quite a lot of investment, including from a US real estate company, particularly into the care sector. And they're very keen to sound a positive and upbeat message. Of course, they are hoping, we know that budget's looming on the 26th of November, the message that the Treasury are trying to send is, look, things are getting better. We're putting in all these sort of business-friendly measures so that the Office for Budget Responsibility will perhaps be a bit less mealy-mouthed about their growth forecast, might revise them up a bit, might give Rachel Reeves a little bit more headroom, because we know, don't we, that she's looking at between 20 and 30 billion pounds of tax rises and possibly spending cuts. She did a speech. There were no questions to the media. I think she's just doing some regional reports, but trying to send an optimistic message. But of course, more gloomy news today, the fact that UK government borrowing in September, 20.2 billion. That is the highest in 5 years. And the Conservatives saying that the government have lost control of the purse strings.
Bryn, it seems extraordinary that the Chancellor is talking to businesses saying, look at this red tape I'm cutting, whilst at the same time supporting 300 pages of further regulations on business through the employment bill that currently this government is pushing through the House of Commons, which will add more imposition to businesses. She's taking with one hand and giving with another.
That's exactly what I was going to say, Tom. Taking with one hand and giving away with another. And of course, business leaders are not best pleased still with the government for all these sorts of announcements, because there was a real charm offensive before the general election. Business leaders had high hopes. And then what did they do? They came in and they whacked £25 billion of tax rises on employers with those national insurance increases. The Workers' Rights Bill, of course, also lowering the threshold at which employers had to pay that national insurance, making it harder to employ people on lower wages. So yes, that's all things that the government has done that business is not happy about, and businesses, of course, very, very worried about further tax rises, though I think the Treasury has heard the message from them loud and clear.
All right, Catherine Forster, thank you very much. Time is ticking. Your chance to win the biggest prize of the year so far, our current Great British giveaway. Just 2 weeks left to get your entry in. You could drive a fabulous brand new motorhome worth over £70,000. You get your hands on £30,000 of tax-free cash. Here are the details.
There's 2 weeks remaining in our latest, greatest giveaway, and a prize worth over £104,000 really could be yours. You could be in the driving seat at this Memoir Primera motorhome. This luxurious home from home comes with all the mod cons, comfortably sleeps your family of 4, and comes fully kitted out with bicycle rack and side awning. Plus, you can use it with your current driving licence. We'll also boost your bank account with a whopping £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like. It only takes one entry to become a winner, and that winner really could be you. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690, Derby, DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. The winner will be contacted live on GB News, week commencing 10th November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Yes, good luck indeed.
This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Plenty more still to come after the break.
It's more bad news for the royal family as the new book by Virginia Giuffre makes a series of jaw-dropping allegations against the prince. What happened next, and what does this mean for the royal family?
Well, all of that and much more to come. We'll also be taking you live to the House of Commons, where an urgent question is to be heard on the grooming gang scandal. That's all to come with GB News, Britain's news channel.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
360,000 people are without a home, thousands of whom are on the street, but most living in terrible, terrible conditions, bedsits, awful B&Bs above rows of shops and hostels. 160,000 of those are children. Can you imagine trying to perform at school or in your job? And this is a crisis, Dawn, and it costs billions. That's the worst thing. We spend about £4 billion a year dealing with this, and it's just getting worse and worse.
Well, let's talk about those 160,000 children, because that's the thing that affected me when I read it this morning. Couldn't believe the numbers of children that are homeless in this country. How is this happening, Andy?
What's happening, Ellie? It's complex, but the biggest single issue, the simplest issue, is that we do not have enough homes. We don't build enough. To put it really simply, if you have a population of 10 people and you have 9 homes, somebody is going to be without a home, and that's what we've got. So when we don't build enough, somebody loses out. It's gone on for decades, by the way. Somebody loses out, and it's always going to be the poorest. It's the people who live the most chaotic lives, or have the least money, are going to be at that bottom and falling out of it. And it's absolute chaos. Ellie, the worst thing about this, it's really fixable. We can get people off the streets. We can create the medium-term accommodation to transition people from the streets, from shelters, into more permanent places. We can do this by reprioritising some of the 2.8 billion. We spend 2.8 billion quid just sticking people into really expensive overnight B&Bs. As I say, awful, crummy places above kebab shops where kids are growing up for months on end and struggling with lack of space. We can fix it, but there just isn't the political will.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Bold. They are under no illusion.
Ray, are you a human trafficker?
Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get this on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline.
Should we be worried about it? From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What I'm going to do now is they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. 12:26.
Stop yawning, Tom.
Virginia Giuffre's newly released memoir contains harrowing claims about 3 alleged sexual encounters with Prince Andrew.
Well, the posthumous account details her battle to escape the control of Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, leaving her fearing that she might die as a sex slave.
Prince Andrew continues to deny all allegations against him.
Well, joining us now is the royal commentator Richard Fitzwilliams. Richard, this book is now out for the world to buy. No doubt it will be shooting up the bestseller charts, but this charts a very difficult course for the Prince. Calls now in Parliament to have his titles stripped, and today the co-author with Virginia Giuffre of this book saying that that's exactly what Ms Giuffre would have wanted.
This book is a cry of pain from beyond the grave. After last Friday's announcement, you could argue that Virginia Giuffre in death has achieved at least part of what she had wished when she was alive. With reference to the co-author's claims, I mean, I do think that this, firstly, is definitely not going to go away in any sense. There are the 3 occasions in which the book, I read extracts only and details, where, according to Virginia Giuffre, she was sexually abused by Prince Andrew. He strongly denies this, and he's never been convicted of anything. But there's no doubt that this will add to the tremendous pressure on him. And with reference to the Parliament and the issue of stripping titles, this would require an act of Parliament. there's no question that given what is likely to come out of the Epstein files, because they are a subject for debate in Congress at the moment, very little has been released. Some of the emails have been very damaging, both to Prince Andrew and to Sarah Ferguson. We don't quite know where this is going to go after Friday's announcement, which was, it was Andrew's statement, but there's no question he was forced into it by King Charles and Prince William. And given the situation, the book is a testament to the most ghastly abuse, but there'll be much more, it would appear, to come.
Well, given what the revelations within the book are, and as you said, Prince Andrew has denied all allegations. He's not pled guilty to any of them. But is he currently a threat to the existence of the royal family?
I would say not, because I think most people recognise that in so many families throughout the country, there are individuals who, frankly, are extremely undesirable. And there seems no doubt in my mind that he falls into that category. The whole litany of disasters over the last, since he was left the Navy, he had 22 years service and was a brave pilot in the Falklands, but subsequently the accusations and the reports that he and his ex-wife, Sarah Ferguson, with whom he cohabits, that they used public positions for personal gain. This is something that Andrew Lowney, in the book entitled The Rise and Fall of the House of York, has postulates. And there seems absolutely no end from the Newsnight interview to the his close friendship with the alleged Chinese spy Yang Tengbo. I mean, you don't know where this is going to go next. The police are investigating the claims that he asked his security officer to look into aspects of Virginia Giuffre having a security number which he should not have had. So we'll await what the police discover there, too.
All right, Richard Fitzwilliams, thank you very much. He's a royal commentator. I suspect if they don't do something about this that is tangible to the public, I think Andrew could be a threat to the existence, because people will think, well, you know.
Yes, although I think they have been much, much clearer than the royal family has been in the past. They have come to this sort of informal agreement that he won't use the title the Duke of York. I don't think anyone's under any impression that the King or that the Prince of Wales is close. I mean, did you see the Prince of Wales standing at that recent funeral where the Duke of York was, well, I suppose we shouldn't call him the Duke of York now, where Prince Andrew was trying to talk with him. And Prince William was just stood there not taking a single word.
Yeah, I know.
I think he knows perhaps he's got a better sense for these sorts of things than others in his family.
Right, well, we're expecting to cross live to the House of Commons, where urgent questions are being asked about the Grooming gang inquiry. We'll bring you that, but first, let's get your latest news with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you. The top story this hour. Prince Andrew is being urged to tell police everything he knows. The ghostwriter of Virginia Giuffre's new memoir, out today, says Andrew should finally speak to US authorities about Jeffrey Epstein's abuse. Andrew denies any wrongdoing, but senior Tory Robert Jenrick claims the public are sick of him.
He's disgraced himself, he's embarrassed the royal family time and again. He should just go and lead a quiet life now.
Breaking in the last half hour, Annie Hudson, prospective chair of the National Grooming Gangs Inquiry, has quit, GB News understands. She stood down due to recent media coverage, deepening the turmoil after 2 survivors also resigned this week. Ellie Reynolds, one of the survivors, told us more members could walk out unless ministers appoint an independent chair.
My message to the Home Office and the government would be well scripted but not scripted enough, because you underestimated the power of the survivors yet again.
Boris Johnson is giving evidence at the COVID inquiry about the effect of the pandemic on young people. He says school closures were a nightmare idea, but he was left with no choice. It's the former Prime Minister's second time at the inquiry, which he launched in 2022. The Conservatives say more than 2,000 serious offenders could be freed early under the government's sentencing bill. Ministers have hit back, accusing the Tories of hypocrisy for doing the same when prisons overflowed. And Maccabi Tel Aviv has refused any tickets for the Europa League tie at Aston Villa, saying a toxic atmosphere makes it unsafe for Israeli fans. The government says it is deeply saddened the game's been weaponised. Those are the latest headlines. I'll be back with the news at 1.
For all the latest from GB News whilst you're on the go, get the GB News app. Scan the QR code now to download or visit gbnews.com/app.
Oh, thanks, Sam. Now, lots more coming up on today's programme.
Happy Trafalgar Day. Today marks 220 years since the Lord Nelson led Britain to victory in the Battle of Trafalgar. Our reporter Will Godley is joining the celebrations in Portsmouth.
Rule Britannia indeed. We'll also be live in the House of Commons for that urgent question on grooming gangs as soon as it begins.
Hello, how's it going? This is your GB News weather forecast coming to you from the Met Office. Most of us will see some sunny breaks today, but there will also be a few showers around, albeit not as many and not as heavy as the showers that we saw yesterday. We still have low pressure in control. It's sitting just to the north of the UK, but it's this that's driving some showery bursts of rain from west to east as we go through this afternoon. There will be some longer spells of rain across the western parts of Scotland, so pretty damp here. Elsewhere, yeah, just a mixture of some sunny breaks perhaps, and also a few showery bursts. If you get any sunshine, it's not going to feel too bad. Temperatures generally peaking in the mid-teens Celsius, obviously under the cloud, and with a bit of a breeze around, feeling a bit fresher in some places. Then, as we go into this evening, still some further showery bursts of rain. The more frequent bursts of rain across Scotland will have pushed a bit further eastwards, and so it's looking relatively damp across many parts of Scotland through this evening. Some clearer spells as we go across parts of Northern Ireland, but still a few showers here, and a similar story really across much of England and Wales. So yes, there will be a few showers around, but also a lot of dry and clear weather. The showers are actually going to ease and clear away as we go through the start of the night. So most places, not everywhere, but most places will turn largely dry, and there will be more clear skies on offer than we saw through last night, which is good news if you're going to try and see the Orionid meteor shower through tomorrow morning. The other side of the clearer skies means that temperatures will drop a little bit lower, so it is going to be a fresher start to the day, and there could be some mist and fog patches around as well. Otherwise, once any mist and fog does clear away, some decent bright weather for most of us through tomorrow morning, albeit a few showers coming in from the west, and then later on turning cloudier, wetter and windier from the southwest, with some heavy rain and strong winds across southern parts as we go into Thursday. More on that in future updates. See you soon.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. Due to essential roadworks on the A87 route between Lochgarry and Bunloyne, traffic restrictions are causing delays in both directions. Road workers are actively managing the situation and diverting vehicles to minimise disruption. Travellers are strongly advised to allocate extra time to complete their journeys to avoid significant inconvenience. On the railways, cross-country train services are experiencing substantial disruptions on the route between Cambridge and Audley End, which are further affected by additional delays through Doncaster. Additionally, all Gatwick Express services have been completely suspended until further notice. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, Britain. Now today marks 220 years since Admiral Lord Nelson's decisive victory over the combined French and Spanish fleets.
Yes, Horatio Nelson was mortally wounded by a sniper during the battle, and a statue to commemorate him was erected famously a few years later, in 1843.
Should we do the toast? Raise your glass. It's to the immortal memory of Lord Nelson. That's the toast, the official toast.
To the immortal memory of Lord Nelson.
Right.
His one eye and his one arm.
Right, let's hear more from GB News' national reporter, Will Godley. Will, tell us more. What's happening? You're in Portsmouth.
Well, in Portsmouth, we are on board HMS Victory, and you know it's an impressive boat when the steering wheel, the helm, is the size of me. This was the boat where Nelson was giving the orders on 220 years ago today, and this is a spot where that sniper shot him, and a service was taken place to remember his sacrifice and service and also leadership. He was taken down these stairs where he later died some 3.5 hours after being shot. Further down the stairs here, there's 100 cannons like these that would have been firing at the French and Spanish boats 220 years ago off the coast of Spain, all under Nelson's leadership. And we'll just come this way as you can see the restoration work taking place on this boat. It's a £45 million restoration project that's due to be finished in 2032, all to ensure that future generations continue to know about what happened off the Cape of Trafalgar 220 years ago today. And as a service that took place earlier remembered, it was all thanks to the amazing strategy of Admiral Nelson. And we can speak now to Matthew Sheldon from the Royal Navy National Museum. Matthew, thanks for joining us on GB News. It was an amazing victory, wasn't it? Britain was outgunned, outmanned, but we managed to win.
Yeah, I mean, we had a fantastic advantage. We were used to being at sea. We had incredibly trained gun crews. And we had a psychological edge. We took that into the battle with us, and it was a tremendous victory. It wasn't about repelling an invasion. We'd actually already turned this fleet around, but what it established was a great victory for the remaining years of the war. People talk about a victory that lasted 100 years, that psychological edge that we got.
And we're remembering the battle today. We're on the ship that's being restored as we speak. How important is that restoration work for future generations?
Well, I think it's absolutely vital. 220 years ago to the very minute, this ship was in action. This was a great European war, a great moment in world history, and there's nowhere else that you can go and walk and see the ships that were in those combined fleets. I mean, when you are walking the lower gun decks on this ship, when you are touching the keel, you are touching the fabric of history that is 260 years old when you're on the keel. It's essential to repair and restore that. This is the nation's flagship, is what we call her, and vital for us to keep her safe for future generations. And it's a massive project, well underway now. £42 million, I think, at the last count. Fantastic shipwrights and team that we have here, and we are determined to keep the ship open through the life of this, what we're calling big repair.
And we're remembering Admiral Lord Nelson today, his sacrifice as well in that service earlier on board. Today, 200 years on, what should people be reflecting on? What do they owe him?
I think he's been used in many different ways, but I think one of the great examples for him in today's Royal Navy was his connection with his crew, the closeness he had, the way that he put them first. And I think we remember Nelson today, we remember the many other. There were nearly 19,000 sailors, Marines in that fleet, as part of a navy of 147,000 pounds. This is a navy that we still rely on today. It takes its inspiration and example as a fighting force from Trafalgar. So remember Nelson, remember the Navy, think about what the Navy did and do for us. I think it's an opportunity this time every year to do that.
Well, Matthew, thank you very much for joining us on GB News as we can hear the restoration work happening from what is very different to the might of the British Navy. You might see over my shoulder behind me now, 220 years on. Today we're thinking about what happened on this very boat 220 years ago today. Tom and Anna.
All right, Will Godley, thank you very much. Lovely report there in Portsmouth.
Absolutely, I'm very jealous. I've always been meaning to go and see HMS Victory.
I'm going to have to go.
It's a sort of museum ship, anyone can go, and I've been meaning to go for the longest time, but never got round to it.
Well, now you've got your new car. You can drive off in your little new car.
This is one of my trips that I have planned, actually, because the Battle of Trafalgar was just such a fascinating and decisive battle.
You could take a packed lunch as well.
Given the number of ships on one side versus the other, you had this sort of crescent formation of the French and the Spanish, and Nelson, instead of going up against them, sort of traditional, line of your ships firing at each other in a line. Nelson decided to just ram the crescent as sort of almost like a battering ram of 2 lanes of ships just going straight through it.
Yeah.
Incredibly daring strategy, but it split their crescent in 2.
It's like a chicken.
And utterly destroyed.
It's like chicken. Again,
This French and German and fleet. French and Spanish fleet.
It's like playing chicken.
A little bit like playing chicken.
Chicken, just straight.
Except where you sink everyone else and make sure that you dominate the world's oceans for the next 100 years.
Right, well, this is Good Afternoon, Britain. Let's get to the comments to the urgent question.
Resolute in delivering Baroness Casey's recommendations following her national audit into group-based child sexual exploitation and abuse. These crimes committed by grooming gangs are among the most horrific imaginable, and her report exposed over a decade of institutional inaction, and we are determined to ensure such failures are never repeated. Central to our response is a statutory national inquiry under the Inquiries Act 2005, which will oversee local investigations with full powers to compel evidence. It will be time limited to 3 years to ensure that victims and survivors receive answers swiftly. The inquiry will examine safeguarding systems, accountability and intersections with ethnicity, race and culture, identifying failures and good practice. The inquiry will work alongside the National Police Operation Beaconport. The appointment of the chair is at a critical stage, and we hope to confirm the conclusion of this soon. Victims and survivors have been at the heart of this process with trauma-informed opportunities to share their views. We've engaged with them on the chair appointment and the terms of reference, which will be shaped by the chair in consultation in public, again, with stakeholders. As widely reported in the media, victims and survivors are meeting prospective chairs this week. Today, in fact. This process, contrary to the reporting, was not managed by the Home Office, but by an independent child exploitation charity, the NWG. We are gathering views to ensure their perspective remains central. We must avoid delays, as was seen in the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse, and are progressing as swiftly as thoroughness allows. Misinformation undermines this process. Allegations of intentional delay, lack of interest or widening of the inquiry's scope and dilution are false. The inquiry will remain laser focused on grooming gangs as Baroness Casey recommended.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This scandal arose because young, mainly white girls were systematically gang raped, and this was covered up by those in authority because the perpetrators were mainly of Pakistani origin. So it's all the more shocking that when calls for a national inquiry became public in January, the Prime Minister smeared campaigners as jumping on a far-right bandwagon. Comments like that are a disgrace and are what led to this scandal being covered up in the first place. Months later, just 2 days before facing a vote in Parliament, the government finally agreed to the inquiry. But it's clear the government never wanted this inquiry, they were forced into it. Perhaps that is why, months later, the government has said nothing substantive publicly, and their inquiry is descending into chaos. What we have heard publicly is that victims and survivors on the liaison panel have no confidence in the government and no confidence in the inquiry. In the last 24 hours alone, 2 have resigned. Fiona Goddard resigned from the panel saying this: "The secretive conduct and conditions imposed on survivors by the government has led to a toxic and fearful environment with a high risk of people being silenced all over again." And hours later, Eliane Reynolds also resigned, saying the remit of the inquiry had, and I quote, been widened to downplay the racial and religious motivations behind our abuse. The Minister shakes her head. That is what Eliane Reynolds says. Fiona also raised the issue of Saba Kaiser, who has been acting as a liaison officer on behalf of NWG. Just 2 years ago, Ms. Kaiser described calling out the fact the majority of perpetrators were of Pakistani heritage as, and I quote, destructive, distracting and irresponsible. Given those, frankly, appalling views and the complaints about them by survivors, will the Minister ensure Ms. Kaiser plays no further role? Victims and survivors have also questioned the suitability of former police officers or social workers to chair the inquiry. They do not believe people from the professions which failed them so badly are suitable. So will the Minister accept this feedback and appoint a judge to lead the inquiry? Will the Minister confirm the scope of this inquiry will not be diluted, as both Fiona and Eliane say is now happening, and confirm it will focus on the cover-up of the rape gang scandal because the majority of perpetrators were of Pakistani origin? Finally, Fiona said this yesterday: I won't be gagged and controlled by the government while they turn this inquiry into a cover-up. So will the Minister apologise to Fiona and to Eliane?
What I would say to the honourable gentleman is that he didn't listen to my remarks at all, because suggesting that the government has silenced anybody is that the government has not handled this process. It has been handled by a grooming gang charity, of which he cites and names a victim of crime. And look, what I will say to the honourable gentleman, which he would know if he had done anywhere near the level of work that I have done, is that not all victims and survivors are of the same opinion. They are not one homogenous group of people who all think the same thing, who all want the same exposure, who all want their identities known. And so what I would say is that I have spoken to Fiona Goddard many times, and I will continue that relationship with her should that be what she wishes. And every single survivor who has been engaged with, of which there have been many, will have different feelings on this subject. With regard to him requiring a judge, Baroness Casey said to this House in the Home Affairs Select Committee she did not want a traditional judicial-led inquiry. She was explicit. And if anyone in this House can find me an institution that didn't fail these girls over the years, including our courts, who took the children away from the grooming gang victims, who criminalised some of them. There is no institution in our country that hasn't failed. We will continue. Today I will meet with many of the victims and get their feedback, and I will continue to progress. With that in mind, I will engage with all the victims regardless of their opinions, and I will listen to those that have been put in the media, that are put in panels. I will always listen, and I will speak to all of them.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Oldham has stepped forward to take forward a local inquiry, and it's been waiting to understand what the move to the national inquiry means for its own work. The same is true of victims and survivors whose bravery and strength in the most difficult circumstances has been truly remarkable. Can I ask the Minister what arrangements are being put in place to ensure that there is a clear front door offering support that is fully independent of councils and police forces? And while local deep dives are clearly important and they are essential, can we have an assurance that if the evidence takes the investigation beyond boundaries for council and police forces, that those will be followed to the fullest?
Minister. I will not be chairing the inquiry, so I can only say to him that the terms of reference that will be set, and as I have said, I'm not sure that this is usual, they will be consulted on in public because of the issue of, I have to say, bad faith and a concern about transparency. They will be consulted on. The remit of the inquiry will be decided by the chair, living within those terms of reference. But I have, having been part of various different inquiries or watched from a distance, that no stone will be left unturned, and whoever chairs this inquiry will feel empowered to do what they think is best.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Max Wilkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
It has been 4 months and longer since the Home Office announced the National Statutory Inquiry into group-based child sexual exploitation. I know ministers will have wanted quicker progress. We on these benches do too. But we still have no chair, no terms of reference, and most importantly, no justice for the victims who have already waited years. And now 2 members of the Victims and Survivors Liaison Panel have stepped down after raising concerns about shortlisted chairs. They seem to have lost confidence in the process before it has begun. The Home Office must listen to and act on the concerns of victims. I know the Minister will agree. It must get this inquiry off the ground. That is the only way to ensure it proceeds with integrity and with the trust of those it is meant to serve. Mr. Speaker, now is the time to prioritise justice and prevention over political point scoring, and I know the Minister will agree with me on that too, because this is an extremely sensitive matter, particularly for the victims. So will the Minister now commit to publishing that terms of reference, along with full details of the inquiry's budget, staffing and a timeline by the end of this month? And if not to that deadline, when will that be published?
I thank the honourable gentleman for both his tone and approach, and what I would say to him is that as per the Inquiries Act, the terms of reference has to be set and it has to be consulted with the chair. The chair is being decided. And the reason it is, I have to say, it isn't taking any longer than the COVID inquiry. It isn't taking any longer than the infected blood inquiry. I think that was 7 months. Each took 7 months from the announcement to the appointment of the chair. And I have to say, I don't remember huge amounts of criticism or bellyaching, because we wanted to get those things right. And actually getting this right means dealing with lots of different stakeholders of victims with different views. And so the process has to follow that the terms of reference has to go through the chair, and so we have already done with victims groups. We have already done some of that work on the terms of reference, but we cannot publish those, which we will do publicly, like I say, until there is a chair appointed. And I will not rush it, because I am going to take note of all of the feedback that I receive.
Please. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, the government announced that it will take parental responsibility away where a child is born of rape. This will protect grooming victims. Children in this country will no longer be the only proceed of crime that criminals can have lifelong access to. Yeah. Does the Minister agree with me that survivors have been failed for too long by a government that didn't prioritise giving them justice? A party led by a leader of the opposition that did not mention grooming when she had the power to do something about it. Instead, survivors have had to wait for victims and activists to be on these benches and the most fierce of advocates to be at the dispatch box.
I thank the honourable lady, and I think she mischaracterises me as the fiercest of advocates, because she, as a grooming victim herself with a child born of rape, is the fiercest, bravest. I could cry. I feel so proud that what this government did was seek to get her elected. And I have been campaigning for the thing that she has fought for with grooming gang victims for nearly a decade. I met with ministers of the then government and nothing was done. It is because the exact thing that the member for Bolsover has campaigned for was asked for repeatedly and nothing was done. It is because of her and this government that today I am incredibly proud of her, and to say that will change.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a copy here of the government's response to the developments last night, addressed to the Home Affairs Select Committee, and I have to say, I find this response completely unacceptable. Is the government seriously implying that Fiona and Ellie, who have been disbelieved and called liars by the British state their entire lives, are spreading misinformation about a process that they have been directly involved in? Because that would be a deeply damaging thing for any government to imply. And worse, Mr. Speaker, there is a line in this letter about the government's proposed inquiry in Oldham, which says the government, and I quote, have have been in discussions with Oldham Council about the right approach for Oldham. But how can that possibly be right? How can the Home Office discuss the right approach with the very local authorities that they are being investigated? It would be like the Post Office sitting down with the Post Office to negotiate how they should be investigated. So can the Minister explain how the government will be restoring trust right now in this process, given the contents of this letter that the Minister sent to the Home Affairs Select Committee last night?
Minister.
Can I just be completely clear? I'm suggesting that I will listen completely and utterly to the feedback from the victims that were and still are on. That they are not spreading misinformation at all. But his interpretation is a brilliant case in point, because I will be completely honest, the conversation with Oldham is, do we not think it might be better for them just to take part in a statutory inquiry? That it is absolutely nothing to do with the idea that Oldham is telling me what to do. And the more people from that side, he can hold up his paper and have a smug face all he likes, but the fact of the matter is that there is absolutely no council in this country who will tell this inquiry where it can and cannot go. I have said that 1,000,000 times from this dispatch box, and yet the same thing gets peddled again and again.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I know the Minister won't want to comment on individual candidates to chair the National Grooming Inquiry. Can I just put on record that Jim Gamble is a highly regarded police officer with a long experience of dealing with this, and when his leadership of the Child Exploitation and Online Protection Centre proved what a fierce as the independent figure he was, with a real track record of tracking down sick paedophiles online and offline. But does she agree that the chair of this inquiry has to be someone who can earn the trust of those who have been let down far too long by those in positions of authority? And can she confirm, as I hope she will, that the inquiry will not shy away from issues of race or class and will follow the evidence wherever it leads?
Minister.
First and foremost, I can absolutely confirm that. And not only that, the Home Office has asked, which was, I have to say, not done before, for police forces across the country to collect data on ethnicity. So absolutely that will not be the case. And with regard, I won't be drawn into, because it's not up to me. Although what I will say about the gentleman that the honourable member has mentioned is that he did resign because he previously, from a previous role working in this, because he thought the then government wasn't invested enough in child sexual exploitation.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the victims of these crimes were vulnerable children who were ignored and who were gaslit and who were dismissed. 2 women have now resigned, 2 victims have now resigned because of this process and their lack of failure in the process. And yet what I hear from the Minister appears to me to be an aggressive and defensive tone. Yeah. Does she regret the fact? Is she going to listen? Well, is she going, remember these people are watching, is she going to listen to the victims? And does she regret that these 2 individuals have resigned from the process?
I absolutely regret that they have resigned from the process that, funnily enough...
So Jess Phillips there answering with the urgent questions. Very fascinating, that, wasn't it? Is she going to listen, was the question being asked.
I haven't seen a House of Commons this impassioned on a topic in quite some time. Our national reporter Charlie Peters has been listening in to this entire exchange, and Charlie, a full and frank exchange of views there across the House.
And it was interesting to hear Jess Phillips's reaction to what Chris Philp had to say, with just saying that she will always listen to victims. And she pointed out, I think, a very key detail, which perhaps some of the Conservatives had actually missed. In their call for a judge to lead this inquiry, Jess Phillips rightly pointed out that all institutions have failed these victims. It's not just the police and social workers, as some are talking about. This is a system-wide failure. And she points out specifically, I mean, we've had these survivors in this very studio talking about this in the past, about how they were criminalised by the courts and by the Crown Prosecution Service, and judges heard evidence and told these girls who were being exploited by gangs that they were worthy of punishment as well. We've also had victims and survivors speaking regularly about how their children were taken away from them, and Jess Phillips echoing those points there. I think that is a tricky one for the Conservatives to respond to. They need to think about when they say, oh, it can't be that profession, it needs to be a different profession. What I'm hearing from survivors, actually, in contrast to sort of a lot of the political rowing on this, is we need to look at individuals, not their profession. You heard Paul Waugh there, the Rochdale MP, defending Jim Gamble, for example, who he rightly says does have a fearless track record of pursuing abusers.
And this is the man who's likely to become the chair.
One of the two candidates, I say two candidates, we revealed an hour ago that the other candidate, Annie Hudson, had withdrawn herself from the process. We understand amid recent media focus, she no longer wanted to be involved, which could spark some questions about the suitability of that candidate, because this is obviously going to be a very live and engaging issue politically, as we've just seen in the House of Commons. Also there, Robbie Moore, the MP for Keighley and Ilkley, holding up a piece of paper, which Jess Phillips disparaged him, waving his paper and looking smug, she said. Again, pointing to some of the energy, referring to Tom in the chamber. He was referring to her statement to the Home Affairs Select Committee yesterday. Jess Phillips said it was untrue to say that they hadn't approached judges, and that it was untrue to say the scope of the inquiry had been expanded. But we do know, and we'll be sharing some of this later, that NWG, that charity, in their liaison with these survivors, they have been asking them, do they want the scope to be expanded? That has been asked of survivors in writing. Now, as you've heard Jess Phillips there saying, it's not the Home Office asking that, it's NWG. But this is the
charity.
This is a charity, but this is a charity which has been commissioned by the Home Office to do this, and it is a panel set up by the government, in effect. So they have been asked if they want to expand it beyond grooming gangs, and I think that is a bit of a difficult one for the government to say, we're very focused on grooming gangs, we're laser focused, in fact, on this, but at the same time, for this panel, many of them who've been ignored for so long, being asked about expanding it.
The other thing that Robbie Moore said was about whether or not some areas would have the full-throttled inquiry, whether some councils would be able to say, actually, no thanks, we don't want an inquiry here, we'll have a listening exercise or whatever else. Jess Phillips seemed perhaps most impassioned coming back to that accusation.
Oldham's very interesting, because we revealed start of this year that they had their request for an inquiry rejected, and I think that was what really re-sparked this conversation and eventually led to the inquiry. But since then, there has been a lot of frustration, I'm hearing from all the sources and contacts we have in Oldham, about how long this process is taking since the government said they would have an inquiry in Oldham. Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary in April, said that there would be at least 5 local inquiries. Clearly that's changed since the national inquiry was announced in June, but we haven't really had that as an announcement. Robbie Moore asking about what's going on in Oldham, how are they being approached by the Home Office. Jess Phillips said there is no council that's going to be sort of allowed to wiggle out of this. However, from my understanding, it's the other way around. The Home Office is going to Oldham. We reported this earlier this month, and they suggested to them that perhaps Oldham could have a truth project instead of an inquiry. That wasn't being requested by the council, that was being proposed by the central government, being proposed by the Home Office. So perhaps there's some space for those questions to continue.
Oh, and there was a moment where it may have felt to people that Jess Phillips was being dismissive of the two the two survivors who were involved in the inquiry, who have stepped away from it.
Yeah, I think Fiona Goddard and Eliane Reynolds have both appeared on GBNews talking about that decision in the last day or so. I mean, Jess Phillips said she will always listen to survivors, even if they're not on the panel that's been gathered for the Home Office. And it's clear she means that. I mean, we know, often survivors that we have met through this work, they'll say, oh, I'm also in touch with Jess Phillips. We know that she spends a lot of time speaking to victims and survivors, and I think there'll be a lot of regret on the Conservative benches watching Jess Phillips making these statements, because she is saying and ordering things that they never did. She is right to say that police forces are being ordered to collect ethnicity data in a way that hadn't been done before. The Conservatives put it forward as an amendment earlier this year, but, well, they were in power for quite a long time before that. Didn't need to be an amendment until 2025. Labour has launched a national inquiry into grooming gangs. There are lots of questions about the scope and where it will go, but all the noises we're getting from government directly at the moment is that they will focus specifically on this grooming gangs issue. Some survivors, however, are saying that in their conversations with the panel, that's being expanded. So they need to be reassured.
Well, there's still lots to go there. Charlie, thanks indeed for being across it for us, across this channel, indeed. Charlie Peters there.
Right, well, the Chancellor is promising to make life easier for businesses by cutting needless red tape.
Well, at the Regional Investment Summit in Birmingham, Rachel Reeves revealed plans that she said will save firms nearly £6 billion a year, with simpler rules and less form-filling for small business owners.
Well, let's speak with GBNews' political correspondent, Catherine Forster, who's there and can tell us a bit more. So, Catherine, give us a sort of a rundown of what the Chancellor was suggesting.
Yes, well, hello from Edgbaston Cricket Ground, where there's 350 business leaders, the Chancellor, the Business Secretary's been here, the Culture Secretary too, talking about growth, something the government still says is their #1 mission. Very anemic growth projections, though, at the moment, and that looming budget. But she's been talking about cutting red tape, making it easier for businesses. They say that by the end of the Parliament, that could save businesses up to £6 billion a year. But I'm joined now by James Murray, the Chief Secretary to the Treasury. Thank you very much for talking to us today on GB News. Can I just quickly ask you on the topic of the day, Prince Andrew, and the fact that it appears he hasn't paid rent for 20 years. The Crown Estates manage royal properties on behalf of the taxpayer. The taxpayer surely should be getting some money out of this. It's not great, isn't it? Should the National Audit Office look again at this?
Well, look, all that I know about that case is that it's a lease that was agreed with the Crown Estate, and as you said, the National Audit Office has looked at it and reviewed it. I'm afraid I don't have any more details than that, but I know that it has been, as I said, agreed with the Crown Estate and looked at by the National Audit Office already.
OK, thank you. Rachel Reeves says that the government's going to get growth that is felt in every part of Britain. I mean, that's easier said than done, though, isn't it? Peter Kyle, the Business Secretary, is off to see HS2. The tunnel has come through to Birmingham, but we're supposed to go to Leeds. We're supposed to go to Manchester. Northern Powerhouse Rail has been put on the back burner again. When are people going to feel better off?
Well, we know we don't want to be defined by our past, so we know there's been 15 years of sluggish growth in this country, and we're determined to change that. And actually today, at this investment summit, there's a real buzz amongst investors from around the UK and around the world, meeting with government ministers like myself, mayors, different regional leaders as well, talking about what all the prospects are for investing in every region and nation of the UK. And there's a real sense of excitement. And I think the reason why there's that excitement is because the businesses and the investors I've been talking to today say, you know what, we've got a government here who really believes in it, a government here who will really work with us, who will really be partners for that private sector investment. And I think that is so crucial to getting growth up in our economy and making people right across the UK better off.
Businesses happy about cutting red tape, but you've got the Employment Rights Bill going through Parliament. That's making it harder for businesses. And of course, the £25 billion of national insurance rises on employers. A lot of businesses were really pretty fed up with you. Are they going to trust that you're not going to hurt them more in this budget coming up in November?
Well, I think businesses know that we took the tough decisions last year to stabilise the public finances and to boost the NHS. And actually having those stable public finances is really important to give businesses the confidence to invest. Because if they look at the public finances, look at the state of the economy, they see stability, it gives them greater confidence to make those investments. And actually, that's what I've heard so much of today from businesses here. They really want to invest. They really want to work with us as a government to get that investment across the country. And they're really pleased by what we've said around reducing regulation, about getting admin and bureaucracy out of the way. Just to give you an example, a lot of small cafes at the moment, a small cafe run by a family, they have to submit lengthy directors' reports to Companies House. We're going to get rid of that and say, look, get on with doing what you do best, which is running that small family cafe, rather than filling in paperwork which doesn't serve any purpose. And all these changes are going to save £1.5 billion for businesses. As I say, that will get towards £6 billion by the end of this Parliament, and that means people's time and money is spent growing their businesses rather than filling in paperwork.
But Rachel Reeves last year, with that £40 billion of tax rises in that budget, said she wouldn't need to do anything like that again. And now we're hearing there's a black hole of £20 to £30 billion. You made some mistakes, didn't you, in terms of decisions that were made? Do you take any of the responsibility for where the Chancellor finds herself now, where you find yourself?
Well, look, I'm not going to speculate on what's going to happen in the budget. The Chancellor will set that out on November the 26th, and in parallel to that, the Office of Budget Responsibility are producing their forecast. But look, let me address what happened at the budget last year. There were difficult decisions which were necessary to fix the public finances, get the NHS back on its feet, and make sure our economy is in a more stable position. Going into this budget, whilst I can't tell you what the Chancellor is going to say, because that is all for November the 26th. One thing that I can say is that she will stick to her fiscal rules because they are non-negotiable. And actually those fiscal rules, the Chancellor was just speaking about them today, are really important for protecting investment in the economy. Because what's happened in the past is when governments have faced decisions at budget time, the first thing to be cut is quite often investment. So that investment in railways, in roads, in housing, in all the things we need in this country, in energy supplies and so on, that's been the first thing to be cut for many, many years. The fiscal rules the Chancellor has introduced say that we live within our means, we pay for day-to-day spending through tax receipts, and we invest for the future. And that was a really important message today, which businesses liked, we think is really important for the country, and will mean that we can all move forward together.
And just finally, borrowing figures out for September, 20.2 billion. That's the highest for 5 years. The Conservatives say that you've lost control of the finances and you're in a doom loop of tax rises. What do you say to that?
Well, I would say, unlike the Conservatives, we will never play fast and loose with the public finances, because we know that working people suffer when you do that, as we saw under the previous government. We will stick to our fiscal rules, and our fiscal rules, which have been endorsed by international commentators like the IMF, will have debt falling, and that's really important to make sure we've got that stability in our economy, which is the foundation on which businesses, like all of those I'm meeting here today, can invest in different parts and nations of the UK, get the economy growing, and put more money in people's pockets.
James Murray, thank you very much indeed for talking to us today on GB News. Back to you in the studio.
Catherine, thanks very much indeed. Interesting times ahead.
Right, well, let's move on. Virginia Giuffre, her newly released memoir contains harrowing claims about 3 alleged sexual encounters with Prince Andrew.
Yes, the posthumous account details her battle to escape the control of Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, leaving her fearing that she might die as a sex slave.
Now, of course, Prince Andrew continues to deny all allegations against him.
Well, joining us now is the former head of Royal Protection, Di Davies. Di, so many stories have been emanating from this book. One that I wanted to raise with you is the severe allegation that that the Duke of York used his personal security to dig up dirt on Virginia Giuffre. Has that ever happened before? Would that happen?
Well, a very good afternoon. Not in my experience and my time, and clearly no officer should ever contemplate doing such a criminal act, because it is a criminal act to do it. And these are allegations, and as far as I know, no officer has been identified. Clearly, there is evidence through that email to a press officer, a deputy press officer to the late Queen, that he asked somebody to do it. Now, clearly, if that is true, and there's no reason at this stage to doubt whether it's true or not true, then clearly that has to be investigated. If evidence of a crime comes through, such as malfeasance in public office or breach of the data protection officer, it would make anyone doing that liable to investigation and ultimately, if proved, to a prosecution, in my view.
Would you say that Prince Andrew is actually a security risk to the royal family? Because that's what people are suggesting.
Well, again, it'd have to be those who have looked at the individuals, the Chinese in particular now, that it's alleged that he was very close to. I think the security services, it's alleged, were concerned as to the level of contact that he had. So if that is true, and given what some people think about Andrew and his limited ability actually to choose the right people to associate with, then clearly that would give a rise to concern. So if that is all true, then clearly he could be, because being a member of the royal family and being a former trade ambassador, so-called, he might be privileged to information which might be useful to an enemy. Now, China is alleged not to be an enemy, but many of us think she probably, the country is. And it just shows yet again, in my view, that this man has no capability of choosing the right people. He has, if you look at his track record, it is appalling. And if it was a businessman representing any company, you would have sacked him years ago, in my humble opinion.
This sort of halfway house, this liminal space between being truly sacked and only part sacked. I mean, being told to not use his Duke of York title, but still being officially the Duke of York. Still being a prince by virtue of his blood and birth, but not being a senior royal. Is this sort of halfway house enough, or will the royal family and even Parliament have to go further?
I think it requires a proper, unbiased investigation into all the aspects, going back to the original allegation that this poor individual, the victim, and other victims made many years ago. I went on Newsnight in November, I've just looked it up, November 2019, and I called for a proper police inquiry then. They have, for reasons best known to themselves, decided 3 times that her allegations and possibly others didn't warrant an investigation. Like so many others now, I think that's probably the wrong decision, and it should be now independently checked by either another force or the IOPC to look at all the circumstances, not only of this case, but other matters that this man has been involved with, including, as Andrew Lowney, who I know and respect hugely, what he deems to have been a catalogue, if you like, of misuse of public funds for many years when he was our trade ambassador. This is a stink that isn't going to go away until somebody gets a proper grip of it. And what did the palace know for all these years? Who has covered up some of his alleged misdoings? I don't know, but I think for the sake of the royal family and the king, somebody needs to ask. And instead of saying we can't talk about it for security reasons, on this occasion, there has to be a proper structured investigation. Otherwise, the king and all the good work that he and Prince William does and other members, we're not talking about anything else. We should be talking about what good work they do, in my opinion.
All right, Di Davis, thank you very much. Di Davis is a former head of royal protection, of course, to remind you, Prince Andrew has denied all allegations.
Now, time is ticking on your chance to win the biggest prize of the year in our current Great British Giveaway. Here's all the details.
There's 2 weeks remaining in our latest greatest giveaway, and a prize worth over £104,000 really could be yours. You could be in the driving seat of this Memoir Primera motorhome. This luxurious home from home comes with all the mod cons, comfortably sleeps your family of 4, and comes fully kitted out with bicycle rack and side awning. Plus, you can use it with your current driving licence. We'll also boost your bank account with a whopping £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like. It only takes one entry to become a winner, and that winner really could be you. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690, Derby, DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. The winner will be contacted live on GB News, week commencing 10th November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good luck indeed. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show.
Yes, government borrowing in September reached its highest level in 5 years. Whoops! How does the Chancellor close this gap? And should we be bracing ourselves for even higher tax rises?
No, it's all because of Brexit, according to her. All of that and more to come. You're with GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Giuffre, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akua, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 25 minutes past 1, and here's some cheery news for you. Yes, new figures show that Britain's borrowing hit £20.2 billion last month. That's the highest September in total in 5 years since the pandemic.
So the ONS, or the Office of National Statistics, says that rising debt interest, along with the cost of public services and benefits, drove the increase.
Well, economists say that higher interest rates are also a key factor, with the Bank of England's rate rising from near zero a few years ago to 4% today.
Well, joining us now is economist Andrew Lillico. Andrew, so we're looking at this. Rachel Reeves initially, well, she's been blaming Brexit as part of the reason, but some may point to some of the particular policies that she's put in place, which haven't helped. For example, the national insurance rise on employers. Is that correct? Should Rachel be looking and admitting that perhaps some of her policies have caused this?
Well, clearly her policies have helped cause this in that she raised public spending very considerably. So a key thing that's happened here is that public spending has risen and it's continued to rise as inflation was higher. Now, part of the reason inflation is higher in the UK is because of the costs created by Reeves' large tax increases. But as she's increased the taxes and the inflation has been a consequence, the tax take hasn't kept up with the growth in the nominal economy, hasn't kept up with that increase in inflation. So she's not getting in as much tax as she expected. So it's true on both sides, right? So she's not getting as much tax as she expected because of the way in which she's raised the taxes, bidding up inflation, and she's raised public spending through various decisions about public sector pay.
Hang on 1 second. As well. When it comes to raising money through a high inflationary environment, and tax rates frozen as they have been for year after year after year, doesn't this usually advantage a government, bringing in more tax than they would have otherwise expected through fiscal drag? And of course, the government's been boasting of higher than inflation pay rises too. You'd think that just by those two metrics, the tax take would be higher.
Absolutely, and there is some analyses which suggest that perhaps you might get a little bit, might be a bit of a catch-up later. But the reality is that in some periods the tax take outperforms what's expected, and in others it underperforms. A few months ago we had there were some of the self-assessment numbers, the big numbers come in early in the year, and those showed that previous rises in corporation tax and in capital gains tax had led to a less than proportionate increase in the amount of revenue. So businesses and individuals are changing their behaviour in such a way as to reduce the taxes which are coming in. This is entirely to be expected at these extremely high levels of tax. And Reeves can't really blame other people. I mean, she was trying to blame Brexit a week or so ago. This morning she seems to be switching to blaming Osborne-era austerity somehow as the next kind of step of where we're going. I'm not sure how far back in time we're going to go eventually for the various, presumably women's thing to do with Edward Heath's policies or something in due course. But it just seems to be absurd. These are decisions which Rachel Reeves has taken, and she needs to take responsibility for the consequences of them.
Now, was she unwise then to have these three things that she refused to raise, so national insurance, income tax and VAT? And even though she has kind of sneakily raised national insurance and then divided it by employers and employees, which obviously then creates a situation where people don't employ more people, and then you end up with lower productivity and then less tax take because fewer people are working. So in my view, I don't understand why do you think she was wrong to refuse to raise these particular taxes?
I think that income tax rates have been too low for many years, several decades now. I think that the ideal tax structure is that was established by Nigel Lawson back in the 1980s. So you have a personal allowance at 0, you have a basic rate at 25p and a higher rate at 40p. That's the way I would do things. So I agree that the decisions there were wrong. In political terms, she felt like she had to make some sort of indication that she was going to be tough on spending, so that her backbenchers didn't put even more pressure. So I think the likely consequence probably would have been, if she hadn't made those undertakings, she probably would have raised spending even more than she has done so. So I doubt it would actually have helped in practice. The reality is the Labour backbench MPs didn't come into politics to cut public spending, they came in to raise it. And we're now in a very difficult situation. The Tories had raised public spending too high. Reeves has raised it further. We're now looking at this year, we've got this 100 billion of a deficit already so far this year. It's likely to reach something like 170 billion for the full year. That's 57 billion higher than was forecast. So they're a long way away from their forecast. I mean, one peculiar thing about all of this, of course, is that the whole notion of headroom is based on a forecast of what happens in 5 years' time. I mean, if they can't even get the 1 year number to within a third or 50%, it's hard to see how you could take seriously a 5-year forecast as the basis of things.
It does seem it's all based on funny money and sort of predictions that never actually come true.
Or variables that they have no control of, like the private school VAT raise, which obviously would result in people taking their kids out of private schools. So then you'll end up with the state sector being burdened.
But I do just want one final question before you go, Andrew. You say that sort of we're spending more money than we ever have before, that it's unsustainable. And yes, for sort of our tax levels, that's true, but I mean, France has a much higher level of public spending as a percentage of its GDP, so does Denmark, Sweden, Norway. Many European countries just have a higher spend, higher tax model. Is that just where we're headed?
It might be eventually, but one thing that you should bear in mind is that those economies have very different economic structures. So the UK has traditionally been very effective at attracting internationally mobile, high-income people, internationally mobile wealth. So we used to think of this as desirable competitiveness. You would say that was what you meant by it. But one of the consequences of that is, and that makes difference to the structure of the economy. It means that you end up with lots of people working in financial services and legal services and various internationally mobile activities. But one of the consequences of that is that if you then increase the taxes, you chase those activities away. So you can eventually, if you keep raising the tax levels, change the structure of your economy much more manufacturing and other kinds of things. Now, you might say that that's a desirable feature. Maybe you would think that was good if we ended up with that sort of economy. But the thing is, between here and there, between when we force this massive change in the structure of our economy and when we actually reach these new, more mature economic situation, that doesn't help with the deficit. Because all that happens in between is you chase away the activity, your GDP fails to grow, you spend a lot and you don't raise the taxes, and you build up more and more debt, possibly eventually reaching some kind of fiscal crisis.
All right, Andrew Lillico, thank you very much. Really interesting. He's an economist.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Still lots more to come on today's programme.
Right, the government spent over £20 billion more than it took last month. Yeah, how worried should we be, and will our taxes be used to plug the gap? All of that and much more after your latest news headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you. The top stories this lunchtime. Annie Hudson, once tipped to lead the National Grooming Gangs inquiry, has quit before interviews even took place, deepening the crisis around the probe. Her exit follows the resignation of 2 abuse survivors from the victims panel, who say trust in the process has collapsed. Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philps says the inquiry is now in turmoil.
It's clear the government never wanted this inquiry. They were forced into it, and their inquiry is descending into chaos.
But Safeguarding Minister Jess Phillips insists the government's moving carefully to appoint the right chair.
There is no institution in our country that hasn't failed.
Also this afternoon, Prince Andrew is being urged to tell police everything he knows. The ghostwriter of Virginia Giuffre's new memoir, out today, says Andrew should finally speak to US authorities about Jeffrey Epstein's abuse. Andrew denies any wrongdoing, but senior Tory Robert Jenrick claims the public are sick of him.
He's disgraced himself, he's embarrassed the royal family time and again. He should just go and lead a quiet life now.
The Conservatives say more than 2,000 serious offenders could be freed early under the government's sentencing bill. Ministers have hit back, though, accusing the Tories of hypocrisy for doing the same when prisons overflowed. Britain's borrowing has hit its highest September level in 5 years, £20.2 billion. Experts are blaming higher interest rates and ballooning debt costs. And Maccabi Tel Aviv has refused any tickets for the Europa League tie against Aston Villa, saying a toxic atmosphere makes it unsafe for Israeli fans. The government says it's deeply saddened the game has been weaponised. Those are the headlines for now. I'll be back with a full roundup at 2.
You can now watch GB News live across the United States of America and the world on Truth Plus. Scan the QR code to find out more, or visit gbnews.com/truth.
Hello, how's it going? This is your GB News weather forecast coming to you from the Met Office. Most of us will see some sunny breaks today, but there will also be a few showers around, albeit not as many and not as heavy as the showers that we saw yesterday. We still have low pressure in control. It's sitting just to the north of the UK, but it's this that's driving some showery bursts of rain from west to east as we go through this afternoon. There will be some longer spells of rain across the western parts of Scotland, so pretty damp here. Elsewhere, yeah, just a mixture of some sunny breaks perhaps, and also a few showery bursts. If you get any sunshine, it's not going to feel too bad. Temperatures generally peaking in the mid-teens Celsius, obviously under the cloud, and with a bit of a breeze around, feeling a bit fresher in some places. Then, as we go into this evening, still some further showery bursts of rain. The more frequent bursts of rain across Scotland will have pushed a bit further eastwards, and so it's looking relatively damp across many parts of Scotland through this evening. Some clearer spells as we go across parts of Northern Ireland, but still a few showers here, and a similar story really across much of England and Wales. So yes, there will be a few showers around, but also a lot of dry and clear weather. The showers are actually going to ease and clear away as we go through the start of the night. So most places, not everywhere, but most places will turn largely dry, and there will be more clear skies on offer than we saw through last night, which is good news if you're going to try and see the Orionid meteor shower through tomorrow morning. The other side of the clearer skies means that temperatures will drop a little bit lower, so it is going to be a fresher start to the day, and there could be some mist and fog patches around as well. Otherwise, once any mist and fog does clear away, some decent decent bright weather for most of us through tomorrow morning, albeit a few showers coming in from the west, and then later on turning cloudier, wetter and windier from the southwest, with some heavy rain and strong winds across southern parts as we go into Thursday. More on that in future updates. See you soon.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, this is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. The A87 between Lochgarry and Bunloyne is facing restrictions in both directions due to essential roadworks. Motorists should proceed with caution and plan additional travel time due to the presence of road workers on the carriageway. Meanwhile, the M48 imposes a 7.5 tonnes weight restriction for heavy goods vehicles, starting from 27th May 2025 until further notice. And on the trains, cross-country is experiencing major disruption between Cambridge and Audley End, and there is no service on the Gatwick Express. Stay informed regarding ongoing and planned disruptions. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, Britain. 39 minutes after 1 o'clock. Now, with the clocks going back this Sunday, people across the UK can expect to see far darker and more gloomy evenings.
Yes, daylight saving time was initially introduced back in 1916 to conserve energy during the First World War. However, many people believe that the practice is outdated, with the Spanish Prime Minister now calling for that European summertime to be abolished.
Of course, it was initially, though, created in 1784, just so you know. Right, joining us now is the head of Lifestyle Economics IEA, Christopher Snowdon, and columnist at The Mail on Sunday, Peter Hitchens. I think, should we start with Peter Hitchens? What are your thoughts? Daylight savings, should it be abolished?
Well, there is no such thing as daylight saving. The amount of daylight remains exactly as nature provides it, nor will the evenings get darker because the clocks are put back to their truthful position on Sunday. The evenings will be as dark as they would always have been. This fantasy that you can alter the amount of light by falsifying the clocks is an absurdity. If you really want to, for instance, start work an hour earlier, which is what clock fiddling in March causes us to do, then you're welcome to do so. But there's absolutely no reason why millions of people each March should be compelled to get up an hour earlier.
Peter, there's a collective action problem here.
I'm sorry?
A collective action problem here. You need everyone to decide to do that, to sort of make things work.
Well, it's the government decides to do it. And the government which originally decided to do this was a wartime government in a panic about possibly losing the First World War, copying the German Kaiser, who had just autocratically ordered all his people, indeed the Austro-Hungarian Empire did the same thing, to get up an hour earlier in the hope of winning the war. Well, you can see how that worked out for them. It didn't actually make any substantial difference. It never has, but it's become a fetish which people don't examine. I call this the biannual national intelligence test. Every 6 months or so, the whole country has its intelligence tested and by and large fails because most people don't understand. Most people don't even know which way the clocks are supposed to go on these
most people don't even have a proper clock.
And have to check.
Let's go to Christopher Snowdon.
But the crucial effect is, in March, what happens is the government orders the whole population to start work an hour earlier. Now, if they actually did that by saying you've all got to get up an hour earlier, everyone would say, what are you talking about? What a ridiculous idea. But because it's presented as am I to be able to speak? Because it's presented as putting the clocks back in daylight saving time and all this completely fact-free drivel, people swallow it because they do. It's become a habit, but there is actually a genuine time which exists. It's to do with the relation between the planet Earth and the Sun. And if you fiddle with the clocks, you alter that. Okay. And for now more than a century, we've madly been departing from it for no good reason.
Okay, Peter, we'll come back to you in a second.
It would be wonderful if we stopped doing it, but what we're probably going to do is stop doing it with the clocks fixed to the wrong place.
Okay, Peter Hitchens, hold that thought. We're going to bring in someone who's described himself as a pro-summer activist in the past. Christopher Snowdon, what do you make of that?
Yeah, well, obviously you can't, on the one hand, say that the government is forcing everybody to go to work an hour early and then say people are welcome to go to work an hour earlier if they want to. As you say, Tom, there's a collective action problem. You know, people go to work at certain times, they have office hours, and those office hours are based on what everybody believes the time to be. So the point here is not that anybody believes that the daylight savings actually creates more daylight. It just creates a daylight when people can actually enjoy it, and people tend to want their leisure and recreation after work rather than before work. It also has daylight saving time various health and well-being benefits. The reason that it was introduced during the First World War is, in fact, it does allow a certain amount of extra efficiency. You need less electricity, for example, in the evenings. You don't need to have the floodlights on during an afternoon football game and all the rest of it. So for health and well-being reasons, I'm very much in favour not just of keeping daylight saving time, but having it all year round.
But also, in terms of safety for women as well, it's better for us to be walking home if it's lighter and things like that. You know what I mean? When it's really dark, it does get dark quite quickly towards the winter months. There's no problem. I mean, what is the real reason as to why this would be a problem, Peter, for the clocks to change anyway? I mean, that's fine, isn't it? We all get used to it, and then it comes back when the light sort of changes.
Well, collective madness is always a problem, and people do something stupid in very large numbers. It's worrying. I mean, I find it amusing now because it's obviously impossible to persuade people that this thing is as crazy as it is. You say things like, it's better for women to be able to walk down the street when it's light. Well, no doubt it is, but the street will remain as light or as dark as it would have been before, whether you fiddle with the clocks or whether you don't. Chris then says there's a contradiction between saying you shouldn't tell people when they must get up in the morning and when they start work, and also saying if you want to start work early, then you can. I don't know whether they still have time clocks at the strange outfit where Christopher works. The last time I ever punched a clock was when I was working in a brewery about 40 years ago. But most people now have immense flexibility at their workplaces. Many of them can work from home. There's absolutely no need for the whole country to be ordered each March to get up an hour earlier and to start work an hour earlier, as happens now.
Peter, you referenced the true
also
time.
the simple point that when the clocks go forward, it's bad for people. And increasing amounts of research show that people's health suffers when the clocks are jammed forward and they all have to start work earlier.
Peter, will you engage with Christopher's point earlier? Because you mentioned... You mentioned the true time in your sense, which I believe you think is GMT, is sort of the proper time. Christopher's putting across a slightly different point of view, which is that we should just be on BST, British Summertime, the whole year round. Would that be so bad? You wouldn't get the changing of the clocks and the neurosis that you're describing there. Sticking on BST all year round, we'd have lighter evenings.
But there's nothing British about BST. What you do if you go to what is called BST is you put the country on the Berlin meridian instead of the Greenwich meridian. The country should be in its proper time zone, which were invented for precisely that reason, so that you could all have the trains running to a timetable and broadcasting at particular times within a time zone. The time zone for this country is the Greenwich time zone. The Berlin meridian, which is several hundred miles further east, is highly appropriate for Berlin, but not for this country. As I was trying to say when you interrupted me, when the clocks are jammed forward and people are forced to go to work an hour early, it affects people's health badly. It's jet lag, and sometimes for weeks, and it's associated with all kinds of health difficulties. It's not good for people. When Portugal...
Come on, Peter.
If I can just finish a point
really,
just for once...
Can we just give the final word? Can we just give the final word to Christopher Snowden? Peter, stop right there, because we've got to go in a minute. So I just want to give...
Portugal has
Stop talking!
Portugal has twice.
Let's get Christopher Snowden in. Christopher Snowden!
To run the whole country.
I think you may just have to talk over him, Christopher. Final word to you.
The reality is millions of people do indeed clock in and out of work. Peter doesn't. Peter's a self-employed journalist, so he can get up whenever he wants to, and the rest of us should enjoy much more pleasant and lighter evenings.
All right. Thank you very much. Nicely done. Christopher Snowden
and,
of course, Peter Hitchens, thank you to both of you.
Oh, we need to give these two an entire length of show. That segment simply wasn't long enough.
I don't think so. No. He was still talking even then. Right. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show, including some breaking news with the Grooming gang's inquiry as a third survivor quits the panel.
Well, that's to come, but in the meantime, let's catch up on that holiday European weather forecast.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine? Won't we need some cover?
No worries, all sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Half term has already started for some of us, but I'm afraid there's not much holiday sun to go around. Parts of Greece will see heavy showers and thunderstorms. Also, many areas of northern Europe will continue to see unsettled weather. Heavy showers, also some strong gusty winds, particularly around northern coasts of Spain and around coasts of France. Italy too will see some heavy showers, and Greece could see some quite intense thunderstorms with hail and gusty winds. These are set to continue as we head later into the week, with hopefully the return of some sunshine over the weekend.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
The Horse Trust basically looks after retired working horses from the military, but also from police forces and from various charities like Riding for the Disabled. And it has, I think, something like 150 horses in its charge. It has been going indeed since, I think, 1905 or something like that. So it's an important charitable foundation run mainly by donations, and that's where Quaker, one of the 5 horses, as you mentioned, has gone to see out its days, out to pasture, if you like.
What happened on that day was really unusual, wasn't it? Because these horses are so well trained to keep calm, you know, in riots and goodness knows what. But something spooked them, and they ran for it, and they ran bumping into cars and trucks, which is why we saw blood coming from them as well. It's so unusual, but lovely to hear that he's retired instead of anything worse.
Oh, absolutely, yes. In fact, Quaker is the only one of the 5 horses that didn't return to military duties.
3 of those horses that did bolt returned to perform in the King's birthday parade last year and looked to me, because I saw it live, kind of perfectly happy and healthy.
Oh, you know, I think they're extremely well looked after, and there's a very strong bond between riders in the whatever regiment it is that the horses are assigned to, and their charges. And this goes back through history, and there are, if you look at the First World War, where, believe it or not, in 1917, there were 600,000 horses in service with the British Army through various theatres of war.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Let's get straight to our national reporter, Charlie Peters, who joins us with some breaking news.
Yes, a 3rd member of the government's grooming gang inquiry survivor panel has quit this afternoon, we can reveal. Her name, Elizabeth Harper, not her real name, of course. She lives anonymously due to continued fears about her safety and security. She's told GB News this afternoon that she intends to write a letter very shortly to the Home Office outlining her reasons for leaving that panel, which is managed independently by a charity called NWG on behalf of the Home Office to gather their perspectives as they prepare to launch the national inquiry. She's told us that she's leaving the panel because she feared there was a lack of genuine understanding of the grooming gang scandal within that process. She has left, Elizabeth, after Fiona Goddard from Bradford and Eliane Reynolds from Barrow also quit the panel last night. Both have appeared on this channel discussing their reasons, and they're very similar to Elizabeth. She also pointed out, Elizabeth, to what she described as a sense of control and stage management. That she said she had left many of the fellow members of this panel questioning whether their voices truly matter. And I think that responds and refers to a story we broke last night, which is that today, as the two potential chair people were up for interview, we were able to reveal last night that they were being asked, the members of the panel, these victims, to submit their questions in advance to that panel being managed by a charity so that they could be screened for duplication, they said. Sources close to the Home Office told us that. That was the reason why they were being submitted in advance. But Tom Crowther, who chaired the Telford inquiry, said that was a sense of stage management and screening that he never would have permitted in Telford, where he hosted an inquiry that found thousands of victims. And he said that when he was looking to be the chair of that inquiry, there was no time limit. He just sat down and engaged with as many people in the town as who wanted to come and query him, those relevant to this crisis. We also revealed last night, as part of this issue about the submitting of questions, they've been given some guidance on the sort of themes they should focus on or could take an interest in. And Elizabeth, in her letter today, said that she no longer felt that the panel is delivering the truth, transparency and accountability that survivors deserve. Well, earlier this afternoon, Safeguarding Minister Jess Phillips had pointed out that not all survivors have the same views and that there was a broad range of perspectives. We've heard at GB News that actually some people do want the scope of this inquiry to look into different areas beyond grooming gangs, but for Elizabeth, this is one of the reasons why she's quit.
Well, Charlie, thanks indeed for bringing us that breaking news. We should say a Home Office spokesman has said the abuse of children by grooming gangs is one of the most horrific crimes imaginable. Any suggestion that this inquiry is being watered down is completely wrong.
All right, well, this is Good Afternoon Britain. Lots more coming up on today's show. Do not go anywhere. Charlie Peters will also be staying with us as the government grooming gangs inquiry descends into chaos.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, how's it going? This is your GB News weather forecast coming to you from the Met Office. Most of us will see some sunny breaks today, but there will also be a few showers around, albeit not as many and not as heavy as the showers that we saw yesterday. We still have low pressure in control. It's sitting just to the north of the UK, but it's this that's driving some showery bursts of rain from west to east as we go through this afternoon. There will be some longer spells of rain across the western parts of Scotland, so pretty damp here. Elsewhere, yeah, just a mixture of some sunny breaks perhaps, and also a few showery bursts. If you get any sunshine, it's not going to feel too bad. Temperatures generally peaking in the mid-teens Celsius, obviously under the cloud, and with a bit of a breeze around, feeling a bit fresher in some places. Then, as we go into this evening, still some further showery bursts of rain. The more frequent bursts of rain across Scotland will have pushed a bit further eastwards, and so it's looking relatively damp across many parts of Scotland through this evening. Some clearer spells as we go across parts of Northern Ireland, but still a few showers here, and a similar story really across much of England and Wales. So yes, there will be a few showers around, but also a lot of dry and clear weather. The showers are actually going to ease and clear away as we go through the start of the night. So most places, not everywhere, but most places will turn largely dry, and there will be more clear skies on offer than we saw through last night, which is good news if you're going to try and see the Orionid meteor shower through tomorrow morning. The other side of the clearer skies means that temperatures will drop a little bit lower, so it is going to be a fresher start to the day, and there could be some mist and fog patches around as well. Otherwise, once any mist and fog does clear away, some decent bright weather for most of us through tomorrow morning, albeit a few showers coming in from the west, and then later on turning cloudier, wetter and windier from the southwest, with some heavy rain and strong winds across southern parts as we go into Thursday. More on that in future updates. See you soon.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
There's 2 weeks remaining in our latest, greatest giveaway. You could be in the driving seat of this Memoir Primera motorhome. This luxurious home from home comes with all the mod cons. Plus, you can use it with your current driving licence. We'll also boost your bank account with a whopping £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like. It only takes one entry to become a winner. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Join me, Nana Akua, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. Oh, no, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Giuffre, this is Jubes & Co with you.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie is here. GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 2 o'clock on October the 21st. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Nana Akua.
Now, a third grooming gang survivor has quit the inquiry, claiming it's becoming stage-managed and disconnected from victims.
Another $7 billion in the red. New figures today show Rachel Reeves has accidentally borrowed $7.2 billion more than she thought she would. Adding to the pain of next month's budget, we speak to Treasury Minister Torsten Bell.
And Britain risks sleepwalking into a de facto blasphemy law, warns one senior politician. The Shadow Energy Secretary Claire Coutinho is calling on the government to publish its secretive working group's advice on the Islamophobia definition. Despite reports the definition has been dropped, work on it continues. We speak to Claire later this hour.
And a groundbreaking new bionic chip could possibly cure blindness. We'll bring you the latest on that.
Sometimes it's easy to look at the sort of day-to-day stories, the Chancellor's borrowing too much money, you know, what's going on in the Middle East at the moment. I genuinely think that in 50 years' time, looking back at the 2020s, we're probably going to view this as a time of medical advancement more than any of the other day-to-day stories that we're looking at.
Do you think? Well, I've got to say, though, I was really impressed when I saw this story, a bionic chip that helps the blind to see. And it's really amazing how it works. It's kind of like an implant that they put in there, and it's like really clever because it captures light by a little camera, and then there's a pocket processor which then translates the visual kind of information into infrared patterns and then zooms the brightness back to a projection module which sends infrared images to the retina, to a retinal implant. I mean, that's really clever. That's like the Bionic Man. Do you remember him?
It's incredible.
Do you remember the Bionic Man?
I'm aware of the Bionic Man.
We will rebuild him.
But you're seeing all of these different advancements. You know, people who were deaf who can hear again. Those videos of when people have their ear implant turned on and then suddenly they can hear their family members. They're just the most uplifting things in the world. If we are genuinely getting technology now that can have the blind see again, have the deaf hear again, we're getting vaccines that can prevent people having cancer, even combat cancer.
And preventing things like HIV as well. They've got a vaccine that's just come out for that as well.
I mean, we are genuinely living through an age of marvels.
They also had that guy, do you remember the guy in the bionic suit, or was it a woman in a bionic suit, hadn't been able to walk, paralysed, and was able to walk for 30 minutes with this bionic suit?
And part of this as well, there's a company called Neuralink, which is developing chips for the brain so that paralysed people can use computers. There are now a dozen people who are completely quadriplegic who can play video games with their minds because they've had one of these chips installed on their brains and they can completely operate a computer or a video games console without touching it at all. It's completely changed their lives. I mean, I think all of these different things, as I say, on the long view of history, we're going to view this time as a really remarkable time to be living through.
I think so, but I think one of the most important things, though, and, you know, obviously paralysis is horrible, but losing sight is one of those horrendous things that could happen because, you know, you may no longer see the people that you love and all that kind of thing, but you can function normally. And that I think, is pretty harsh. And that's why many who end up blind take their lives and things like that. So I think some of this technology, I mean, that's just incredible. That needs to be finished so that people who can't see can see. I think it's just amazing.
Let's hope those advancements keep coming, absolutely. And do send us your thoughts, your views, of course, gbnews.com/your say on all the topics that we discussed today. But for now, let's get the very latest news headlines with Sam.
Very good afternoon to you. Just after 2 o'clock, the top story, Annie Hudson, the front-runner to chair the government's national grooming gangs inquiry, has quit, deepening the crisis around the already troubled investigation. Sources say she withdrew before interviews took place, telling officials she was no longer interested following recent media coverage. Her exit comes after now 3 survivors on the victims' panel have resigned, accusing the Home Office of delays, secrecy and losing their trust. Well, speaking in the Commons earlier, Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp said the inquiry has descended into chaos and that survivors have no faith in the process.
When calls for a national inquiry became public in January, the Prime Minister smeared campaigners as jumping on a far-right bandwagon. Comments like that are a disgrace and are what led to this scandal being covered up in the first place. Months later, just 2 days before facing a vote in Parliament, the government finally agreed to the inquiry. But it's clear the government never wanted this inquiry, they were forced into it. Perhaps that is why, months later, the government has said nothing substantive publicly and their inquiry is descending into chaos.
But Safeguarding Minister Jess Phillips insists that the government remains committed to uncovering the truth, and she says it will do whatever it takes to get the inquiry back on track.
Baroness Casey said to this House in the Home Affairs Select Committee she did not want a traditional judicial-led inquiry. She was explicit. And if anyone in this House can find me an institution that didn't fail these girls over the years, including our courts, who took the children away from the grooming gang victims, who criminalised some of them, There is no institution in our country that hasn't failed.
Also this hour, the ghostwriter of Virginia Giuffre's memoir, Nobody's Girl, out today, has called on Prince Andrew to tell US police everything he knows about Jeffrey Epstein's abuse. Amy Wallace says the Duke of York needs to speak about his own moral compass, claiming his silence continues to hurt Epstein's victims. Lawyer Gloria Allred, who represents several of those victims, echoed the call, urging Andrew to cooperate with investigators about what he may have witnessed at Epstein's Manhattan home. Well, Prince Andrew continues to deny all wrongdoing, but earlier the senior Tory Robert Jenrick told us he thinks the public are sick of him.
He's disgraced himself, he's embarrassed the royal family time and again. He should just go and lead a quiet life now, away from the public gaze. He certainly shouldn't be drawing on the taxpayer in any way. No more subsidies for luxury homes for him. Enough is enough.
The Conservatives say more than 2,000 prisoners convicted of rape, of stalking and grooming could be freed early under the government's new sentencing bill. They've tabled an amendment to block what they call an insult to victims, warning dangerous offenders should serve their full terms. But ministers have hit back, accusing the Tories of hypocrisy, pointing out that thousands of serious criminals were also released early when they were in power. The government insists the new bill is designed to ease overcrowding while keeping the public safe. US President J.D. Vance has just arrived in Israel as Washington is pushing to stabilise the fragile Gaza ceasefire. His visit follows talks between Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner as Hamas leaders meet mediators in Cairo. J.D. Vance is expected to meet military command centres overseeing Gaza's stabilisation efforts amid renewed clashes and disputes over aid and hostage returns. Donald Trump's 20-point ceasefire plan calls for Hamas to disarm and for steps towards a Palestinian state. Demands at this stage both sides have yet to fully accept. Israeli football club Maccabi Tel Aviv has said it will refuse any tickets for next month's Europa League match at Aston Villa over safety concerns for its supporters. It follows a decision by Birmingham's Safety Advisory Group to ban Maccabi fans from attending, a move the government later urged to be overturned. But the club says a toxic atmosphere and hate-filled falsehoods have left fans fearing for their safety. The government says it is deeply saddened by the situation, calling it completely unacceptable that the match has been used to stir up violence and fear. And Pizza Hut has announced 68 of its restaurants will close across the UK, with more than 1,200 staff set to lose their jobs. Branches in cities including Leeds, in Brighton, Bristol and Edinburgh will shut in the coming weeks, along with 11 delivery sites. Administrators say soaring costs and tax pressures forced the move. Global parent company Yum Brands has stepped in to save 64 remaining restaurants, while Pizza Hut says it is working with affected staff to ensure they receive support. Those are the latest headlines. I'll be back with you shortly. Next, though, a look at the markets.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Here are the markets just after 2 o'clock. The pound will buy you $1.3389 and €1.1518. The price of gold, £3,185 and 75 pence per ounce. Apologies there for the slight graphic issue. And the FTSE 100 is at 9,433 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Good afternoon, Britain. Now back to our breaking news. A third survivor has quit the government's grooming gang inquiry, warning it's become stage-managed and disconnected from victims.
Well, the Rotherham survivor told GB News she'd lost faith in the process, saying that survivors feel silenced and the truth about grooming gangs is still being buried. Well, our national reporter Charlie Peters is here with more. Charlie, 3 now in less than 2 days. Gone.
Yeah, this is a difficult time for the government and also really for the panel, which was set up on behalf of the Home Office by this independent charity, NWG, to get an understanding of the perspectives of survivors. But we've now seen 3 quit over a range of fears, but a lot of them overlap. Fiona Goddard, Ellie Reynolds, and now Elizabeth Harper, which is not her real name. She lives with a pseudonym due to continued threats to her life and her safety. They're all saying that they have fears about the terms of reference, about the scope of this inquiry, and also Elizabeth Harper telling GB News that she has concerns about the stage management. And when she's saying that, she's referring to how people were asked to submit questions in advance before they met with the two potential chairs this morning. Although we did also reveal earlier today that Annie Hudson, former senior social worker, she had actually quit that process and was not interviewed this morning. So just one candidate was interviewed, Jim Gamble, Northern Irish, very senior police officer who's worked on tackling child sexual exploitation in the past at a very senior level. Now, 3 survivors quitting, Tom, as you say, that is difficult for the government and also for this panel more broadly, because it is trying to get a range of views. Jess Phillips, speaking in the House of Commons today, said that she regretted the 2 previous survivors quitting their roles in the national inquiry. I absolutely regret that they have resigned, she said. But she also said that, you know, it's always sad when victims feel as though they can't take part in a process. She also says she doesn't know who's on the panel. It's independent from her. And she also said in the Commons that there is a range of views on this issue among survivors. There isn't any uniform pattern of perspective. And that's certainly true also for what we've heard at GB News. Now, when several survivors talk about expanding the scope and concerns they have there are other survivors we're speaking to engaging with the government who do say they do want to look at grooming gangs, of course. This is what this inquiry is meant to be about. But they want to look at elements linked to the grooming gang scandal. So perhaps family abuse conducted by those perpetrators. Did they target their own family members as well? Looking at other issues about the online abuse, not just on-street grooming, which is, of course, another element coming in through modern forms of technology as well. So there is disagreement on the panel. Jess Phillips is right to say there aren't uniform views, but these 3 survivors all quitting for those similar reasons.
Charlie, this victims and survivors liaison panel, obviously it's quite right that we don't know the full membership of it. Sure. I mean, it would be a massive breach of confidence to know the full membership of it. But you speak to some of the members of it. Can you give us a sense of how big a loss this is to the panel to have 3 individuals gone? Do we have a general sense of the size of the number of the people who are on this panel?
I do, but I'm not going to share it, I think, out of respect to them. And I think also it is significant, though. One is significant. And as Jess Phillips said, losing any survivor from this process is difficult for them. And the Minister has said that she will continue to engage with victims and survivors, whether they're on the panel or not. So even if Fiona, Ellie and now Elizabeth have left those roles, they're still going to have a chance to follow up with the NWG and the Home Office. And I expect that they will very sincerely try and engage in those conversations.
Sorry, the NWG?
Is the Network for Women and Girls. That's the charity running this panel. Now, we're also able to show today that on these fears about the scope expansion, which we've heard from so many of the survivors who've quit. Now, in a letter to the Home Affairs Select Committee last night, Jess Phillips, the Minister, said it was untrue, totally untrue to suggest there's any broadening of the inquiry. But, and this is one of the reasons I think why we've seen people quit, in correspondence from that charity to members of the panel, they were asked if the probe should take a broader approach than just grooming gangs. So all members of the panel were asked, should the inquiry have an explicit focus on grooming gangs, this is a direct quote, or group-based CSEA, which is exploitation or abuse, or take a broader approach? And this was asked amid several questions for reflection ahead of a panel meeting. So you have this difficult situation for the victims and survivors on this panel where the government is saying we're being laser focused, we're looking specifically at grooming gangs, and they're trying to work out how they're going to narrow down the very broad recommendation that Louise Casey gave in June when she said it should establish an investigation into an inquiry into group-based child sexual exploitation and abuse. But at the same time, they're being asked, should it take a broader approach by this charity commissioned by the Home Office? Now, there are different layers and layers of responsibility here, and the government can rightly say it's not us asking that, that's the NWG, this charity, reaching out to them. And also, it's right for us to point out that some members of the panel do want that question to be asked. They do want those discussions to go ahead. But for some survivors, we have to remember, you know, they have been waiting for decades for this inquiry, for this laser-like focus on grooming gangs. And to get questions from an organisation which is meant to take in their views, to feed back to the government, to help inform the terms of reference, to ask them, should it be broader, That has sparked a lot of fears, and I think it's a significant reason, as we've heard, why these women have left that role.
All right, Charlie Peters, thank you very much. Our national reporter, Charlie Peters.
Now, we should say that in response, our Home Office spokesperson has said the abuse of children by grooming gangs is one of the most horrific crimes imaginable. Any suggestion that this inquiry is being watered down is completely wrong. We're committed to delivering a robust, thorough inquiry that will get to the truth and provide the answers that survivors have long campaigned for.
Right, well, that's 16 minutes now after 2 o'clock. Virginia Giuffre, newly released memoir, contains harrowing claims about 3 alleged sexual encounters with Prince Andrew.
Well, the posthumous account details her battle to escape the control of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell.
Prince Andrew continues to deny all allegations against him.
Well, joining us now is the royal commentator Jack Stooks. Jack, it's fair to describe this as a crisis for the royal family.
No, completely. It's devastating for all of them to sort of see this unfolding. Prince Andrew, you know, we saw that interview. I think most of us have watched that interview, the sort of now infamous interview where he was claiming he was at Pizza Hut. He was claiming he didn't sweat. He was claiming that he had never met this person, that there was photographs with him and her in London. And those stories haven't gone away. If anything, they just there's more and more meat being added onto all of those stories, and it's looking worse and worse for him. We've seen him give up his titles. We're now seeing the press speaking about perhaps let's now have him leave where he's living. The royal family are distancing themselves from him, rightly so. But the palace have said, you know, they want it looked into, and if they're saying the right things and they're doing the right things by it, let's now hope that, you know, that he can be looked into more substantively. Let's hope that the police are doing their research. Let's hope that previous people working closely with Prince Andrew are actually interviewed. I don't think anybody has been interviewed that were around him at that time. And, you know, we might discover more things coming out from the close circle of his personal staff. We haven't heard any reports of that. So we don't actually know if any of his staff have even been questioned about what was going on at that time. All we know is Prince Andrew keeps denying the claims, but yet the noises are getting louder and louder.
Do you think, Jack, that he's a risk in terms of the royal family? Because I hear people who are real monarchists and so proud of the royal family now getting weary of all the scandals that seem to be surrounding him and other members who seem to be taking advantage of their so-called royal privilege. And do you think that the royal family need to act decisively and actually properly ensure that his titles are officially removed? Because right now he doesn't have to use, he's not really allowed to use them, but legally he could still.
Nana, thank you. Do you know, I think that the problem is that nothing like this has happened in the royal family before. There hasn't been this kind of disaster for the family. And I think that they're all treading quite carefully. I don't think they know quite what to do because Andrew has still been found innocent. He's never been found guilty of doing the crime that he's being told he's done. So we've got this very tricky situation where he's claiming he hasn't done it. He paid Virginia Giuffre quite a substantial amount of money for something he hasn't done, which doesn't look very good for him. We've now have a suicide on our hands as well. Somebody's committed suicide because they obviously couldn't go through any more of what's been going on in her life, which is devastating. You know, that's done more for her mental health and her family's mental health. I mean, it's everything that the royal family speak about, you know, protecting people with mental health, you know, not allowing people to commit suicide. I mean, we've just seen the Prince of Wales, Prince William, go and speak to somebody in Wales about exactly that situation. So it's everything that they're doing. It's almost Prince Andrew's going completely against everything that they're saying. So I do think that there's got to be something that's got to happen soon. And it's like I know I've said to you before, this is just, you know, we're just scratching the surface of what's to come.
Yeah.
Of course, there's no... Thank you very much for that, Jack Stooks. He's a royal commentator. Of course, there's no suggestion that Virginia took her life specifically because of Prince Andrew, just to put that out there. And Prince Andrew does deny all allegations.
Well, time is ticking on now for your chance to win the biggest prize of the year in our current Great British giveaway. Here's all the details you need.
There's 2 weeks remaining in our latest greatest giveaway, and a prize worth over £104,000 really could be yours. You could be in the driving seat at this Memoir Primera motorhome. This luxurious home from home comes with all the mod cons, comfortably sleeps your family of 4, and comes fully kitted out with bicycle rack and side awning. Plus, you can use it with your current driving licence. We'll also boost your bank account with a whopping £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like. It only takes one entry to become a winner, and that winner really could be you. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690, Derby, DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. The winner will be contacted live on GB News, week commencing 10th November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Well, good luck indeed. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Still lots more to come on today's programme.
Yes, the Metropolitan Police have been cracking down on shoplifters by targeting the capital's more unscrupulous retailers. Our Home Affairs editor Mark White has been following the police on patrol.
All of that and so much more. This again is GB News, Britain's #1 news channel.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, DC.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates, 5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5. You got me. You got me good there. Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show. It's not a bad brand. Yeah. Uncensored. Very, very racy tonight on the unpredictable. What did she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Some breaking news to bring you. The United States President Donald Trump has issued a stark warning to Hamas on his Truth social account. He says that if Hamas don't do the right thing, their end will be fast, furious and brutal.
Breaking news. Do we have the exact statement?
We do. It says numerous of our now great allies in the Middle East and areas surrounding the Middle East have explicitly and strongly, with great enthusiasm, informed me that they would welcome the opportunity at my request to go into Gaza with a heavy force and straighten our Hamas if Hamas continues to act badly in violation of their agreement with us. The love and spirit for the Middle East has not been seen like this in 1,000 years. It is a beautiful thing to behold. I told these countries and Israel, not yet. There is still hope Hamas will do the right thing. If they do not, an end to Hamas will be fast, furious and brutal.
He goes on to say, I'd like to thank all of those countries that called to help. Also, I would like to thank the great and powerful country of Indonesia and its wonderful leader for all of the help that they have shown and given to the Middle East and to the USA, to everyone. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump.
Well, really significant goings-on there, saying that a coalition of Middle East forces could indeed enter Gaza to wipe out Hamas if Hamas do not lay down their weapons as they agreed to in the peace deal.
Well, of course, they're also waiting for more bodies for the hostages to be returned, which were not returned, yet Israel kept their side of the bargain, releasing thousands of prisoners. But joining us to respond to that and react to that is... perhaps not.
Well, Mark White was going to be here for another story, but perhaps a quick sentence from you on Donald Trump's message.
Well, listen, I think we were always going to hit some roadblocks in this 20-point peace plan that they are embarked on now, not least of which, of course, is the ability of Hamas fighters to abide by the ceasefire. Israel has accused them of breaking that ceasefire on numerous occasions. They have been contained so far, and the peace plan is still on track. But clearly there are concerns about, one, as I say, the ability of this group, this terror group, to abide by the peace plan and also to deliver on what they had said they would, which was the return of the 28 hostage bodies. So far, they've only released a fraction of that. Understandably, from their point of view, perhaps getting to the remains of those victims who are trapped well underground in tunnel systems that have been blown to pieces is not that easy, but that's just adding to the sense of distrust that there is there. So a very clear and specific threat to Hamas: get a grip, get back on the path to peace, or the consequences will be very severe.
OK. Thank you for that response to that. Now let's talk about what you were here to talk about. I knew that, but then you gave me the look, Mark. I thought, oh, God, he doesn't want to talk about that. But let's talk about unscrupulous retailers who've been targeted in the UK's biggest ever operation against shoplifting.
Yes, the Met Police targeted more than 120 small businesses in the capital who were suspected of buying and reselling goods stolen from high street shop chains.
Well, our Home and Security editor, Mark White, was given exclusive access to follow one of the operations.
Across the capital, hundreds of officers have been mobilised. This is the biggest ever operation against the scourge of shoplifting. Shockingly, those they're after today are other retailers. Small independent businesses fueling crime against major store chains by purchasing and reselling stolen goods. This business in southeast London is suspected of being part of that illegal trade.
All of these goods are going somewhere, so all of the things that these prolific offenders are stealing en masse are not just vanishing into thin air. So that is where we started to work on our intelligence and improving our intelligence gathering capabilities. And that is what led to this pattern that we're seeing very regularly, where large multiple supermarket chains are being stolen from en masse, and that those goods are appearing in very nearby smaller independent stores.
Get down! Yeah?
OK? Mate, you're under arrest, OK, for shoplifting. You don't have to say anything.
So often in recent years, shoplifting has been a low priority for many forces. But having reached epidemic levels, with retailers pointing to roughly 6 million offences each year, authorities are devoting many more resources to fighting retail crime.
Show me.
Here they're using the latest in DNA markings to help officers identify stolen goods, using specially trained sniffer dogs and ultraviolet lamps.
Shop theft is something of a scourge. Obviously, retailers need to do what they can to prevent it. So this is a product that acts as a deterrent to deter people away from stores. So yeah, its popularity is increasing.
Police have imposed a temporary closure of this shop while their searches continue. Now, if they find that this business has been dealing in stolen goods, then they'll apply to the courts for a more permanent closure of the shop.
Mate, we've got a warrant here to search his property.
Police say the vast majority of the crime that blights so many high streets is committed by a relatively small number of prolific offenders who, for the most part, are addicted to drugs and alcohol. They're now being targeted by specialist police teams. But so too are the unscrupulous shop owners who are exacerbating the surge in crime against their own neighbours by selling on those stolen goods. Mark White, GB News.
Well, who else to speak to than our very own Mark White? The police certainly keen to tell the world they're doing more to stop this.
Yes, and understandably, because many people think the police are not as responsive to shoplifting as they should be. And that is true right across the country. This has been a low priority for many police forces for years, but it has reached epidemic proportions now. The last set of figures that came out, official reporting figures, so the number of retail outlets contacting the police, more than 500,000 last year reporting thefts. That is just a tiny proportion of the actual thefts, which are more than 6 or 7 million. The retail associations, various retail associations, say most outlets don't even report it because they know that the response from police in past years has been woeful. The previous government and now this government say there is much more of an incentive for officers to go after those that are involved in this kind of activity. More resources have been put into that, and indeed they're changing the law. You remember previously, but still the law at the moment is going through Parliament under the crime bill, but if you had stolen items of £200 or less, you're unlikely to face a criminal charge. Well, that is being changed here. And it really is an issue that's blighting high streets right across the country. They reckon that there is a reasonably small cohort of only about 29,000 people across the whole country of 67, 68 million people who are regularly involved in shoplifting and carry out this activity, blighting these shops right across the country on a daily basis, and of course then selling it on, not just out in the pub as you would expect, the sort of traditional idea of what someone that's stolen some steaks from the supermarket does. They're handing them off to an increasing number of independent small retailers in high streets who are taking them, buying them and then reselling them.
It's about time the police really got involved in that. Are they going to reduce the paperwork and things like that? Because that was one of the reasons why the police really didn't want to get involved in this, because there's a massive paperwork when they arrested anybody.
Well, they've made the paperwork more efficient, but it's not been reduced. All they do is it's kind of carried out in electronic terms. Officers will often have mobile electronic devices where they'll record items, but, in terms of recording crime, it's still a cumbersome process.
I guess if you had an ID card, they'd scan the barcode and they've got everything.
Yeah, and I mean, thing is, as well, if you arrest someone, it can take that officer out of operation on that, the duty they're doing for the rest of their shift, because it takes hours and hours to process someone. So part of the reluctance in the past has been they are arresting someone for what was traditionally seen as a low-level crime worth only a few pounds, and then taking them to the police station. That officer is then tied up for the rest of the shift dealing with
What about the CPS? Are they going to address the Crown Prosecution Service then? Because once you've got this arrest thing going, then you've managed to process them. Now you have to get them...
You see, but that is another really good point, Nana, because, yes, the government says that it wants to deal more robustly with those that are causing misery in the high street, but then you get it to the courts, and the courts are being told by the very same government, don't jail people if it's for a year or less, because our prisons are overcrowded.
OK, well...
Go figure.
Go figure, indeed. Mark White, thank you indeed for bringing us all of that and that exhilarating report.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show.
Yes, will the government's new Islamophobia definition bring in a blasphemy law by the back door? The government is suggesting they're abandoning it, but the Shadow Minister for Women and Equalities, Claire Coutinho, joins us after the break with some challenges to the government's assumptions. All of that to come and more.
Hello, how's it going? This is your GB News weather forecast coming to you from the Met Office. Most of us will see some sunny breaks today, but there will also be a few showers around, albeit not as many and not as heavy as the showers that we saw yesterday. We still have low pressure in control. It's sitting just to the north of the UK, but it's this that's driving some showery bursts of rain from west to east as we go through this afternoon. There will be some longer spells of rain across the western parts of Scotland, so pretty damp here. Elsewhere, yeah, just a mixture of some sunny breaks perhaps, and also a few showery bursts. If you get any sunshine, it's not going to feel too bad. Temperatures generally peaking in the mid-teens Celsius, obviously under the cloud, and with a bit of a breeze around, feeling a bit fresher in some places. Then, as we go into this evening, still some further showery bursts of rain. The more frequent bursts of rain across Scotland will have pushed a bit further eastwards, and so it's looking relatively damp across many parts of Scotland through this evening. Some clearer spells as we go across parts of Northern Ireland, but still a few showers here, and a similar story really across much of England and Wales. So yes, there will be a few showers around, but also a lot of dry and clear weather. The showers are actually going to ease and clear away as we go through the start of the night. So most places, not everywhere, but most places will turn largely dry, and there will be more clear skies on offer than we saw through last night, which is good news if you're going to try and see the Orionid meteor shower through tomorrow morning. The other side of the clearer skies means that temperatures will drop a little bit lower, so it is going to be a fresher start to the day, and there could be some mist and fog patches around as well. Otherwise, once any mist and fog does clear away, some decent bright weather for most of us through tomorrow morning, albeit a few showers coming in from the west, and then later on turning cloudier, wetter and windier from the southwest, with some heavy rain and strong winds across southern parts as we go into Thursday. More on that in future updates. See you soon.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. The M8 has restrictions between Junction 29 and Junction 29A due to debris. Drivers should exercise caution and expect delays. A 7.5-ton weight restriction is in place on the M48 for heavy goods vehicles from the 27th of May 2025 until further notice. In Essex, a broken-down vehicle on the M11 southbound entry slip at Junction 6 from the M25 clockwise has closed one lane. Normal traffic is expected to resume shortly. And on the trains, cross-country faces major disruptions between Cambridge and Audley End, while no service runs on the Gatwick Express. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 20 to 3, and the Shadow Equalities Minister, Claire Coutinho, has called on the government to publish their advice on this Islamophobia definition so it can all be publicly scrutinised.
Well, she is worried that the definition will have a chilling effect on our public bodies.
But the government seems to suggest it's ditching the definition. So what's the truth? Well, joining us now is the Shadow Equalities Minister, Claire Coutinho herself. Claire, this is a fairly confusing story because earlier this week, a lot of people were cheering from the rafters that the government had ditched this entire process. But you think they haven't?
No, I'm afraid that's not the case. So what they've said is that they're going to ditch the headline term Islamophobia, but they're going to replace that, we hear, with something more like anti-Muslim racism or hatred or hostility. But there is still a definition coming. And what we don't know is what is in that definition, who will it silence, how will it affect people? And it's really important that we know this because the entire process of coming up with this definition has been shrouded in secrecy from start to finish. They started by going to a small, hand-picked group of radical activists behind closed doors. It was only when I uncovered the link that we forced them into a public consultation, and now they haven't published that consultation response. They haven't published the working group's advice to government, and they haven't published the draft definition. And the reason why this is important is that they could decide to adopt this definition, again, behind closed doors, and then they would start to push it into our institutions, our schools, policing, the NHS, councils, for example. And the risk is, if you have a bad definition, no matter what it's called at the top, you will have this chilling effect across the public sector, making them less able to grasp difficult issues.
Claire, why is it so important to have the definition of Islamophobia? Surely we have enough laws to protect people if there's any racism or hate spewed at them. So why is it important?
Well, you're right. And just to be clear, this is not about violence and harassment. There are multiple pieces of legislation which protect people from violence, harassment and discrimination because of their religion or their race. This is not about that at all. This is for use in our public bodies, like I said, for use inside the NHS, in our councils. And the reason why I think a definition could be so damaging is in those very institutions, we've already seen when they've tried to take on difficult issues within the Muslim community, then people have used this term Islamophobia to shut down debate. Now, we saw that with the grooming gang scandals, and in fact, some of the people involved in this new definition had also previously said that even talking about the grooming gangs was an example of anti-Muslim racism. We've seen that when it comes to our counter-terrorism efforts, and we've seen that, for example, even in schools, when Amanda Spielman, the former head of the schools inspectorate, was looking at whether girls in primary schools should be wearing hijabs, she was denounced for being an Islamophobe. So my worry is that rather than doing anything to tackle what is a real problem, by the way, anti-Muslim hate and targeting of the Muslim community, is actually a vehicle to shut down debate in our institutions.
I've been really trying to wrap my head around why people try and draw this false equivalence between anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, because I suppose this is the justification why they there's a definition for anti-Semitism, therefore there must be one for Islamophobia. But I suppose what I've come to is it misses the fundamental point that being a Jew isn't about what you believe. You can have an atheist Jew. You can't really have an atheist Muslim. They're called ex-Muslims. So the Jewish people are a people, whereas Islam is a belief structure. And so I suppose if we start talking about protecting a belief structure in a way that is not an immutable characteristic of any human being who holds it, then we're entering into territory whereby we're sort of policing what people should say about what people believe.
And you're exactly right. We shouldn't conflate race or religion. There should be no religion or set of cultural practices or ideas which are above criticism. And secondly, there is a big difference in that the anti-Semitism definition, as you say, it's protecting a race of people, but it was an international consensus which was there to solve a particular problem, which was Holocaust denial. And actually, in the case of this Islamophobia definition, what you've seen within our public bodies is actually the opposite problem, that too often when it comes to these thorny issues, they have not been able to head them off because people are so worried about being called Islamophobic or racist. And actually, again, I come back to this point, this doesn't serve the moderate Muslim community at all well, because if our public bodies are seen to give special privileges and not be able to take on difficult issues, you think about the horrors of the grooming gang scandal and how much that's touched the public emotion. If our public bodies have been able to grasp that issue very early on and said, hang on, we see what's happening here, we can take it on, we can stop it, then actually that would have been much better for the overall population of Muslims in our country, because you wouldn't have had this awful thing happen and go on for so long. And that's what I really worry about, that rather than protecting people or reducing violence and harassment, it actually breeds resentment because people see one group that they feel are being given special privileges or being put on a pedestal above others.
All right, Claire Coutinho, thank you very much. As the Shadow Equalities Minister, thank you so much.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Up next... No, you like this story.
Well, I do.
Yeah.
Could a new bionic chip cure blindness? We'll be discussing this remarkable news after the break.
But first, if you're in search of some holiday sunshine, here's the weather in Europe.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Half-term has already started for some of us, but I'm afraid there's not much holiday sun to go around. Parts of Greece will see heavy showers and thunderstorms. Also, many areas of northern Europe will continue to see unsettled weather. Heavy showers, also some strong gusty winds, particularly around northern coasts of Spain and around coasts of France. Italy too will see some heavy showers, and Greece could see some quite intense thunderstorms with hail and gusty winds. These are set to continue as we head later into the week, with hopefully the return of some sunshine over the weekend.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power?
Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber.
Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics.
We'll see where this ruling takes us.
These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Britain was once the envy of the world, but look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m.
Only on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akua, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's now 10 to 3, and this is an incredibly exciting story. Yes, a groundbreaking scientific development. Blind patients are now able to read and recognise faces again with the help of a bionic chip.
Yes, it's a fabulous invention. Now, the electronic implant, which was tested on patients, has been called revolutionary.
Now, this is one of those big moments, I think, where people can see the genuine benefit of technological advancement. We're told that technology gets better every year, and maybe our phones get a little bit faster, and maybe there's a new whizzy gadget or something. But when it's applied to giving sight to blind people, I mean, that is just one of those such a visceral example of progress.
Yeah, it really is. And I mean, it's like a revolutionary, like a bionic chip. And it's an implant with an ultra-thin wireless microchip. And it measures just 2 millimetres by 2 millimetres. And it's inserted under the retina, and it links to a video camera that's fitted on a pair of augmented reality glasses. I mean, can you imagine it? Well, joining us now is a senior vitreoretinal. Yes, I can just about see that. Consultant at the Moorfields Eye Hospital and the UCL Institute of Ophthalmology, Mahit Mujit. So, Mahit, tell us more. This sounds incredible.
Yeah, good afternoon. Yes, it's been a long journey. This is almost 10 years all the team have been working on, but it's great news that we've finally been able to restore vision in blind patients with macular degeneration. So it's amazing news for our patients.
Does it work with all blindness, or does it have to be specifically that condition there?
I know the clinical trial was tested with a condition called dry age-related macular degeneration and also a subtype called geographic atrophy. So the chip is placed in the center of the retina, where the light-sensitive cells are no longer present, and the retinal chip is a wireless chip that replaces the cells, and that's allowing the patients to see with the spectacles and the other part of the platform. Yeah.
Is it available to the public at some point, or when can it be rolled out?
Yeah, I mean, currently Science Corporation America is going through regulatory processes, and hopefully in the future it will come to our patients in the UK through the NHS in a few years' time, absolutely.
Do you get a sense that we're living through some sort of quite miraculous age of advancement? I mean, it does seem that we're getting so many different advancements in so many different fields in such a short space of time.
I mean, this actually is, I mean, you're right, this is the frontier of science. Stanford have been working on this for over 15 years, so it's taken a long time. So this clinical trial has been running for the last 8 years. So it does take time, but I have to say we finally got to that milestone of restoring meaningful vision. So patients are seeing what we see. They're able to, no longer live in isolation. And it's fantastic for our patients to be able to see again.
Mahit Mujit, thank you so much. Really good to talk to you. Fascinating. 15 years in the making, and finally it could be available. Moorfields Eye Hospital, I think that's what you need to find out. Go to them.
Absolutely. Well, thanks indeed for being with us here today on Good Afternoon Britain. We're, of course, back with you tomorrow from midday. But stick around today at GB News, because Martin Daubney's up next.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, how's it going? This is your GB News weather forecast coming to you from the Met Office. Most of us will see some sunny breaks today, but there will also be a few showers around, albeit not as many and not as heavy as the showers that we saw yesterday. We still have low pressure in control. It's sitting just to the north of the UK, but it's this that's driving some showery bursts of rain from west to east as we go through this afternoon. There will be some longer spells of rain across the western parts of Scotland, so pretty damp here. Elsewhere, yeah, just a mixture of some sunny breaks perhaps, and also a few showery bursts. If you get any sunshine, it's not going to feel too bad. Temperatures generally peaking in the mid-teens Celsius, obviously under the cloud, and with a bit of a breeze around, feeling a bit fresher in some places. Then, as we go into this evening, still some further showery bursts of rain. The more frequent bursts of rain across Scotland will have pushed a bit further eastwards, and so it's looking relatively damp across many parts of Scotland through this evening. Some clearer spells as we go across parts of Northern Ireland, but still a few showers here, and a similar story really across much of England and Wales. So yes, there will be a few showers around, but also a lot of dry and clear weather. The showers are actually going to ease and clear away as we go through the start of the night. So most places, not everywhere, but most places will turn largely dry, and there will be more clear skies on offer than we saw through last night, which is good news if you're going to try and see the Orionid meteor shower through tomorrow morning. The other side of the clearer skies means that temperatures will drop a little bit lower, so it is going to be a fresher start to the day, and there could be some mist and fog patches around as well. Otherwise, once any mist and fog does clear away, some decent bright weather for most of us through tomorrow morning, albeit a few showers coming in from the west, and then later on turning cloudier, wetter and windier from the southwest, with some heavy rain and strong winds across southern parts as we go into Thursday. More on that in future updates. See you soon.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
There's 2 weeks remaining in our latest, greatest giveaway. You could be in the driving seat of this Memoir Primera motorhome. This luxurious home from home comes with all the mod cons. Plus, you can use it with your current driving licence. We'll also boost your bank account with a whopping £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like. It only takes one entry to become a winner. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
In most cases, adoption is really great. We've got an amazing adoption system here in the UK with really fantastic charities. We've seen about 1 in 20 dogs being adopted. Lots of people during COVID went out and bought lots of dogs. We had a huge increase in the dog population. And then those people went back to work, and some of them couldn't care for their dogs anymore. So the dog charities are literally chock-a-block. They're all fully booked up with their spaces. When you go and see that dog, I think you can get a feeling yourself of, how that dog is with you, that instant love and affection that you get from that dog. So use your heart. And save a dog.
And also take the advice, I think, of the people at the rescue centre. There was one that I really fancied because it was prettier than the one that they were recommending to me. And I said, oh, no, what?
Shallow.
Oh, that one. And they said, no, you're a first-time owner. That dog is not for you. That dog is a very high-maintenance dog, needs a very, very experienced owner. And they gave me the right one.
It's just coming up to the Christmas period where people make emotional decisions about pets for a family.
And a dog is not just for Christmas, it's for life. And it's a lifelong commitment. Dogs are with us, and some of them are needy and some of them are more independent. If you give your dogs lots of love, you exercise them well, you feed them well, you're able to leave them for, short periods of time. But if you are at work for 8-10 hours a day, it's just too long to leave a dog for. So, really keep that in mind, that, is that dog going to work for you in your life? Saying that, dogs bring you so much. They're going to make you live longer. They're going to, they're so good for you sort of health-wise. They're going to take you out for a walk